A jury of 12 and 6 alternates was duly impaneled and sworn.
The court said, "Counsel, would you approach, please?"
At the sidebar,
The court said, "Who's opening for the government?"
Mr. Ferguson said, "I am, Your Honor."
The court said, "And for the defense?"
Ms. Shrofa said, "I am."
The court said, "All right. You may step back."
Ms. Shrofa said, "Thank you."
in open court.
The court said, "Good morning."
The juror said, "Good morning."
The court said, "Members of the jury, the case is officially on trial, and you are the jurors in the case. As you can see, the jury is composed of 12 members. In addition, there are 6 alternates. If you are an alternate, you need to pay as close attention to the evidence as the jury. If for any reason any one of the members of the jury is unable to serve, an alternate will be required to step into the place of that juror. I now will give you some preliminary instructions to guide you in your participation in the trial. The second part of the trial is about to start. This part is the opening statement by the prosecution. In the opening statement by the government, he's required to indicate to you what the prosecution intends to prove by way of evidence to support the charges against the defendant. Once the government's opening statement has been completed, defense counsel has the option to make an opening statement. Now, what attorneys say in an opening statement is not evidence. An opening statement is, in a sense, a preview of what the attorney expects that the evidence will show. Next, the government will present a witness and will ask the witness questions. This is called direct examination. Once the government completes those questions, the defense will then be given an opportunity to question the witness. This is called cross-examination. This process will continue for each witness the prosecution will present to give testimony. When the government finishes calling all of its witnesses, the defense will be given the opportunity to present witnesses also. Remember, the defense need not prove anything. Therefore, they do not have to cross-examine the government's witnesses or offer their own witnesses. Once both sides have finished presenting witnesses, the defense and the prosecution will be given the opportunity to make closing remarks to you. These closing arguments will not be evidence. They are just arguments made by the attorneys to discuss the facts and circumstances in the case, and they should be confined to the evidence and to reasonable inferences to be drawn from the evidence. So again, neither opening statements nor closing remarks are evidence, and you should disregard any statement or argument made by the attorney that is not based on the evidence. After closing arguments, I will give you detailed instructions on the law that relates to this particular case. When I finish my instructions, you will then retire to deliberate to reach a verdict. Now I'm going to instruct you on evidence. First, let me tell you what evidence is. Basically, evidence consists of oral testimony under oath, any stipulations of the parties, and physical exhibits during the trial that are introduced by either the prosecution or the defense and allowed into evidence. If an exhibit is given to you to examine, you should examine it carefully, individually, and without comment. There are 2 types of evidence, direct and circumstantial. Direct evidence is direct proof of a fact such as testimony of an eyewitness. Circumstantial evidence is proof of facts from which you may infer or conclude that other facts exist. There's a simple example of circumstantial evidence that is often used in this courthouse. Assume that when you came into the courthouse this morning, the sun was shining and it was a nice day. Assume that the courtroom shades were down and you could not look outside. As you were sitting here, someone walked in with an umbrella that was dripping wet. Then a few minutes later, another person also entered with a wet umbrella. Now you cannot look outside the courtroom and you cannot see whether or not it is raining, so you have no direct evidence of that fact, but on the combination of facts that I have asked you to assume, it would be reasonable and logical for you to conclude that it had been raining. That is all there is to circumstantial evidence. You infer, on the basis of reason and experience and common sense, from one established fact the existence or non-existence of some other fact. Not all circumstantial evidence presents clear, compelling inference. The strength of the inferences arising from circumstantial evidence is for you to decide. I will give you further instructions on these as well as other matters at the end of the case, but have in mind that you may consider both kinds of evidence. If you're instructed that some evidence is received for a limited purpose only, You must follow that instruction. Questions asked by either attorney or even myself are not in and of themselves evidence. Only questions coupled with answers are evidence. Therefore, you may not infer any fact from the mere asking of a question. The reason that I point this out to you is simple. During the course of questioning, the prosecution and the defense may exercise their right to object to the other's question, to an answer given to a question, or to introduction of an exhibit on the ground that the attorney believes it is somehow legally improper or inadmissible. At that point, I will sustain or overrule the objection. If I sustain an objection to a question, you must disregard the question and any answer, if one has been given. You must also draw no inference from the question or from any answer. Nor are you to speculate as to what the witness would have said if permitted to answer. Evidence stricken from the record must likewise be disregarded. Conversely, if I overrule the objection, the question will be allowed and the answer will stand, and it remains as evidence. When I overrule an objection to any evidence, you must not give such evidence any more weight than if the objection had not been made. Please bear in mind that my rulings on the law are simply that, and under no circumstance are such rulings to be considered by you as indicating that I have any opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the defendant. Under our law, the judge may not and will not entertain any opinion as to the guilt or innocence of the accused. Members of the jury, you and you alone are the sole and exclusive judges of the facts. Now I want you to understand that objections may come rather quickly, and at times either party may seem worried. Please do not resent this or penalize either party for this. Understand that they are just doing their job and this is part of it. As I stated at the beginning, you are the triers of fact. Therefore, it is up to you to decide which witness to believe and which witness not to believe. Furthermore, you will decide how much of every witness's testimony to accept and how much to reject. How do you decide what to believe and what not to believe? Listen to the witnesses, watch them, and observe them. Then decide whether you believe or disbelieve them in the same way that you decide such questions in your everyday life. Did they know what they were talking about? Were they candid, honest, open, and truthful? Do they have a reason to falsify, exaggerate, or distort their testimony? Just use your common sense in evaluating all testimony. All that is asked of you is that you apply the same common sense you would apply in your everyday lives to determine who is telling you the truth, who is not, and who is telling you something less than the full truth. Please remember that it is the quality of the evidence that controls, not the quantity of the evidence, or the number of witnesses called by either side. You must decide the case solely on the evidence and law before you, and must not be influenced by any personal likes or dislikes, opinions, prejudices, sympathy, or biases, including unconscious bias. Unconscious or implicit biases are stereotypes, attitudes, or preferences that people may consciously reject but which may be expressed without conscious awareness, control, or intention. Like conscious bias, unconscious bias too can affect how we evaluate information to make decisions. All of us, no matter how hard we try, tend to look at others and tend to weigh what they have to say through the lens of our own experience and background. We each have a tendency to stereotype others and to make assumptions about them. Often we see lights and evaluate evidence through a clouded filter that tends to favor those like ourselves. You must do your best to put aside such stereotypes, for all litigants and witnesses are entitled to a level playing field, in which we do the best that we can to put aside stereotypes and prejudices. You are to be guided solely by the evidence in the case and my instructions on the law. Although you are the sole judges of the facts, my job is to be the sole judge of the law. You must accept the law as I give it to you, without any hesitation or reservation. You must accept the law as I give it even if you privately disagree with me or the law. There are three basic principles of law that apply to this in all criminal cases: the presumption of innocence, the prosecution's burden, and the standard of proof. First, the presumption of innocence. A defendant is presumed innocent, and that presumption remains with the defendant throughout the trial, and is not removed unless and until the defendant's guilt is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The indictment containing the charges against the defendant is only an accusation, nothing more. It is not proof of guilt or anything else. Therefore, because no evidence has been presented to you as of yet, if you were to deliberate right now, you would have to find the defendant not guilty. Second is the prosecution's burden. The burden of proof is on the government. The defense has no burden and is not required to do anything to prove his innocence. The defense has the option of just sitting back and doing nothing. Why? Because the defense has no burden of proof, and the defendant is presumed innocent. The defendant is not required to put on a defense or call any witnesses because of the presumption of innocence. If the defendant chooses not to take the stand, to testify on his behalf, you may not draw any negative inference from that. In other words, you cannot hold that against the defendant. Third is the standard of proof. The prosecution is required to prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This standard does not require the prosecution to prove the defendant's guilt beyond all doubt or to a mathematical certainty. The prosecution does, however, have to prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The doubt is not reasonable if, instead of being based on the nature and quality of the evidence or the insufficiency of the evidence, it is based on some guess or whim or speculation unrelated to the evidence. In my final instructions to you at the end of the trial, I will give you detailed instructions on the law as to the specific charges against the defendant. Those instructions are intended to guide you through your deliberations and to enable you to reach your decision. Finally, I'm now going to instruct you on how you must conduct yourselves during the trial. You must keep an open mind during the trial. You must keep your eyes open during the trial. You may not ask the witnesses questions. Do not converse either amongst yourselves or with anyone else about anything related to the case. You may tell the people with whom you live and your employer that you are a juror and give them information about when you'll be required to be in court. But you may not talk with them or anyone else about anything related to the case. Do not at any time during the trial request, accept, agree to accept, or discuss with any person the receipt or acceptance of any payment or benefit in return for supplying information about the trial. You must promptly report directly to me any incident within your knowledge involving an attempt by any person to improperly influence you or any other member of the jury. Do not visit or view the premises or place where the charged crimes were allegedly committed, or any other premises or place involved in the case. And you may not use Internet Maps or Google Earth or any other program or device to search for and view any location stated in the testimony. Do not read, view, or listen to any accounts or discussions of the case reported by newspapers, television, radio, the Internet, social media, or any other form of news media. Do not attempt to research any fact, issue, or law related to this case, whether by discussion with others, by research in a library, or on the Internet, or by any other means or source. In this age of instant electronic communication and research, I want to emphasize that in addition to not conversing face-to-face with anyone about the case, you must not communicate with anyone about the case by any other means, including by telephone, text messages, email, Internet chat or chat rooms, blogs, or social websites such as Facebook and X. You must not provide any information about the case to anyone by any means whatsoever, and that includes the posting of information about the case or what you are doing in the case, on any device or Internet site, including blogs, chat rooms, social websites, or any other means. You must also not Google or otherwise search for any information about the case or the law that applies to the case or the people involved in the case, including the defendant, the witnesses, the lawyers, and myself. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand why these rules are so important. Our law does not permit jurors to converse with anyone else about the case or for anyone to talk to them about the case because only jurors are authorized to render a verdict. Only you have been found to be fair, and only you have promised to be fair. No one else has been so qualified. Our law also does not permit jurors to converse among themselves about the case until the judge tells them to begin deliberations, because premature discussion can lead to a premature final decision. Our law also does not permit you to visit a place discussed in the testimony. First, you cannot always be sure that the place is in the same condition as it was on the day in question. Second, even if it were in the same condition, once you go to a place discussed in the testimony to evaluate the evidence in light of what you see, you become a witness, not a juror. As a witness, you may now have an erroneous view of the scene that may not be subject to correction by either party. That is not fair. Finally, our law requires that you not read or listen to any news accounts of the case and that you not attempt to research any fact, issue or law related to the case. Your decision must be based solely on the testimony and other evidence presented in the courtroom. It would not be fair to the parties for you to base your decision on some reporter's view or opinion, or upon information you acquire outside of the courtroom. These rules are designed to help guarantee a fair trial, and our law accordingly sets forth serious consequences if the rules are not followed. I trust you understand and appreciate the importance of following the rules, and in accord with your oath and promise, I know you will do so. During the trial, it may be necessary for me to confer with the lawyers out of your hearing with regard to questions of law or procedure. On some occasions you may be excused from the courtroom for that reason. I will try to limit these interruptions as much as possible, but you should remember the importance of the matter you are here to determine, and should be patient even though the case may seem to go slowly. Finally, I permit jurors to take notes, but you do not have to take notes. Notes are just an aid in your own recollection. The court reporters in this case record everything that is said in the courtroom, and any portion of the testimony can be read back to you here in open court during your deliberations. If you do take notes, be aware that note-taking might distract you from something important that is happening on the witness stand. Whether or not you take notes, rely on your own recollection, and don't be influenced by the fact that another juror has taken notes. I just told you that you are to report any attempt by anyone to improperly influence you. Lawyers are not permitted to have any contact with you other than what takes place on the record in this courtroom. If you see an attorney, for an example, in the hallway or outside, and the attorney does not say hello or acknowledge your presence, please don't think that the attorney is being rude. The attorneys simply are not permitted to have that type of contact with you. Now Assistant United States Attorney Micah Ferguson will make his opening statement.
Mr. Ferguson said, "This case is about how the defendant, Miles Guo, conned thousands of investors out of $1 billion. And it's about how he spent millions of dollars of victim money on himself. In online videos, the defendant pitched investments in a series of companies. In these videos, the defendant said many false and misleading things. But at its core, the defendant's fraud was simple. He promised his victims they'd get rich, that their investments were safe, and they would not lose any money. He told them that, as an ultra-rich billionaire, he would personally guarantee and pay back any losses. He assured them he would never, ever let their investments be stolen. These were lies. The truth is that the defendant took investor money and spent it on himself: million-dollar cars, yachts, a mansion. Miles Guo ran a simple con on a grand scale. He lived a billionaire's lifestyle using money he stole from people he tricked and cheated. Now the defendant couldn't run a con this size alone. You'll learn that the defendant and his partners in crime built a criminal enterprise of different companies to carry out this fraud. Some of the companies had offices right here in New York City. The employees called the defendant the boss and the principal. And the defendant and his inner circle used these businesses to steal money from their victims and to spend it on themselves. And that's why we're here today, because when the defendant conned people out of their money, he committed several crimes involving fraud. When he and his partners moved around investor money to hide that they were spending it on themselves, they committed money laundering crimes. And because the defendant committed these crimes, using a criminal enterprise, a group of people and companies he controlled, he committed a racketeering offense, a RICO conspiracy. Ladies and gentlemen, in this opening statement, I'm going to tell you what the evidence at this trial will show and how the government is going to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. So first, what will the evidence show? For years the defendant deceived thousands of people and stole their money to pay for a lifestyle he could no longer afford. You see, the defendant used to be a wealthy real estate developer in China. But he left China and came to the United States. Eventually the defendant spoke out against China's government, the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP for short. He began giving interviews and broadcasting his own videos. And he didn't talk just about the CCP. The defendant also talked about how rich he was. He showed off his $70 million apartment on Central Park, or his $30 million yacht. And the defendant's mix of showing off wealth and criticizing the CCP was popular. He became an internet celebrity in the Chinese community. He had thousands of followers. And you're going to learn that the CCP didn't like this, that the CCP tried to silence the defendant. Even tried to have him brought back to China. And you'll learn that the governments of China and Hong Kong seized the defendant's assets shortly before the schemes began. So the defendant needed money. Now you're going to learn that the defendant pitched many different investment schemes to his victims. But each one was just a new spin on the same simple fraud. The defendant told his followers that their money would be used for an investment, and they could not lose any money. And instead, the defendant stole the victim's money and spent it on himself. He did that through four main schemes: GTV, the farm loans, G-clubs, and the Himalaya exchange. I'm going to talk about each of those schemes in turn. So the first business that the defendant raised money for was GTV. What was GTV? It was an online media company with a website and an app that had the defendant's videos, his broadcasts on it. What did the defendant tell his followers about GTV? He told them it was their special opportunity to get rich without any risk. In 2020, the defendant announced in his online broadcast that he would let his followers buy GTV stock. The defendant told his followers that investing in GTV had no risk. He told them he would personally pay back any losses. He told them that investing in GTV could only make them money. These were lies. And the defendant even lied about the most basic part of the GTV investment, that the money raised from GTV investors would be used for GTV. To grow the business of GTV. Even that basic promise was a lie. But the defendant's followers trusted him. And money poured in. In months, victims invested over $400 million in GTV. What did the defendant actually do with that money? Almost immediately, just days after the fundraising for GTV closed, the defendant took $100 million of GTV investor money and used it for a high-risk investment on behalf of his son. He essentially made a bet using $100 million of GTV investor money. Sent it to a hedge fund for an extremely risky investment. This bet wasn't even made on behalf of GTV. It was made in the name of a company owned by the defendant's son. And guess what? The hedge fund bet didn't pay out. This hedge fund bet lost $30 million. The defendant told GTV investors that he would personally guarantee their money and pay back any losses. Did he pay back the $30 million loss? No. That was just a lie. What was GTV? It was one way that Guo lied to take other people's money. But it wasn't the only way. There's GTV and then the farm loan scheme. Now farms. These farms didn't have anything to do with farming or agriculture. The defendant used the word farms to refer to online groups of his followers in different cities or countries. And the farm loan scheme was just a way to continue the GTV scheme. You see, almost right away, U.S. regulators began investigating what GTV was doing. Funds were frozen, and GTV's bank accounts were shut down. But the defendant, he didn't stop. Instead, in his broadcasts, the defendant blamed these problems on the Chinese government. He claimed that victims who were complaining about their money being stolen were traitors and CCP spies. And the defendant told his followers they could still buy GTV stock, they just couldn't call it stock. Instead, investors could use loans that would be organized through the farms. You see, each farm opened bank accounts that were used to collect and pool money from farm members, the investors. The defendant told his followers that to get GTV stock, they could enter a loan agreement with a farm and send their money to that farm. He said the farm would then enter a loan agreement with GTV, and after a few years, the defendant's followers, the farm members, could choose whether to get GTV stock or cash. But that was another lie. The defendant and his money launderer stole the farm loan money for themselves, and the victims got nothing. GTV. Then the farm loan scheme. What were the farm loans? They were another way that Guo lied to take other people's money. The next scam was G-clubs. Now G Clubs was supposedly a high-end lifestyle membership club, but really, it was another way for the defendant to sell stock without calling it stock. The defendant told his followers that by paying G Club's initial membership fee, they would get stock in GTV or G Fashion, the defendant's clothing company. How much was the initial membership fee? The initial fee started at $10,000 and went up to $50,000 on the high end. Thousands of the defendant's followers paid this fee, sending G Clubs hundreds of millions of dollars and expecting to receive stock in return. But G Club's members did not get stock. That was another lie. Did members get anything for their membership costing tens of thousands of dollars? The main thing they got was a discount at G Fashion, which sold expensive clothing to the defendant's followers. Like an $800 pair of sweatpants. You could get 10% off that price if you paid $10,000 for a G Club's membership. And while G Club's members did not get stock or any benefit worth tens of thousands of dollars, the defendant spent the G Club's membership money on himself and his family. GTV, farm loans, G Clubs. What was G Clubs? It was another way that Miles Guo lied to take other people's money. Now the defendant didn't just pitch stock to his followers. He also pitched a pair of cryptocurrencies sold on the Himalaya exchange. At first he called them G-Coin and G-Dollar. Then they became H-Coin and H-Dollar, H-Coin for Himalaya Coin, H-Dollar for Himalaya Dollar. These cryptocurrencies were another scam. In his broadcast, the defendant told his typical lies about this cryptocurrency, guaranteeing investors would not lose money. He told his followers that H-Coin was backed 20% by gold. Ladies and gentlemen, H-Coin was not backed by gold. The defendant tricked his followers into buying H-Coin and H-Dollar because he wanted more money. You see, the only place you could buy H-Coin or H-Dollar was a supposed cryptocurrency exchange called the Himalaya Exchange. But the Himalaya Exchange was run by the defendant's money launderer. Same one who helped him steal the farm loan money. You're going to learn that when the defendant was in a bind and needed money, the defendant's money launderer sent $37 million of Himalaya Exchange money, real dollars, not H-Dollars, to get the defendant out of the bind he was in. $37 million of money that victims sent to the Himalaya Exchange used for his benefit. GTV, farm loans, G Clubs. The Himalaya Exchange. What was the Himalaya Exchange? It was one more way that Miles Guo lied to take other people's money. These four schemes were really just different versions of the same con, where the defendant tricked people out of their money so he could spend it on himself and his family. And he did it for greed. He used investor money to pay for a luxury yacht, for private jets, to buy luxury cars. A Lamborghini that cost nearly $1 million, a Bugatti that cost $4 million, a $4 million Ferrari for his son. A second luxury yacht, a 50,000 square foot mansion that he paid millions more to renovate for himself and his family. And to buy things like a $35,000 mattress and a $60,000 TV. And the victims? The investors whose funds were stolen by the defendant to fund these spending sprees? They got nothing. They just lost money, money they had saved, money they had borrowed, their family money, money they thought was safe. And he just stole it.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, objection.
The court said, overruled.
Ms. Strofa said, This is opening statement.
The court said, overruled.
Mr. Ferguson said, That's what the evidence is going to show. Now how is the government going to prove it? Prove to you that the defendant is guilty? You're going to see and hear several different types of evidence. You will hear the defendant's own words. You will see the defendant lie on video over and over. You'll see him lie and say that his victims can't lose money, that he would pay back any losses, that he would never spend investor money on himself. And you'll hear him lie about what he did with investor money, saying that he has not touched even a penny of it, and admitting that if he did, it would be a crime. You'll also hear what the defendant and his co-conspirators said on phone calls when they didn't know they were being recorded by a concerned employee. You will hear the defendant order his co-conspirators to transfer $100 million of investor money that he later used to buy his mansion. And you're going to see records related to each of the four main frauds. About how the investor money was supposed to be used, and then you'll see records showing how it was actually used. Bank records showing how the defendant and his co-conspirators used dozens of shell companies and hundreds of bank accounts to conceal the fact they were spending investor money on themselves. You'll see the GTV investment document that says GTV investor money would be used to grow GTV's business. And then you'll see the record showing $100 million of GTV investor money going instead to a hedge fund bet for the defendant's son. You'll see the farm loan contracts given to victims, pieces of paper that were ultimately worth nothing to them. You'll see the bank records showing that farm loan money was just stolen. And you'll see photographs of the things the defendant bought with G Club's membership money. All while promising in his recorded broadcast that G Club's memberships were a way to invest in GTV or G Fashion. You'll see photographs of the G Club's Lamborghini that was parked in the defendant's garage at his Connecticut home. Photographs of the defendant's mansion in New Jersey, paid for with G Club's money. You'll see photographs of the defendant's custom Italian suits hanging in his bedroom closet at that mansion. You'll see the bank records showing the $37 million transfer of Himalaya exchange money for the defendant's personal benefit. All while the defendant told investors in recorded broadcasts that he had no ownership in the Himalaya exchange and that H-coin and H-dollar money was secure. Now you'll also hear the testimony of witnesses. You will hear from people who used to work for and used to trust the defendant. You'll hear from former employees of the defendant's G businesses. They will tell you that the defendant and his co-conspirators ran and controlled those businesses and made the decisions about how money was spent and where it was transferred. Now some of these former employees are testifying pursuant to what's called non-prosecution agreements, in which the government has agreed not to prosecute them in exchange for their testifying at this trial. So you should listen carefully to the testimony of these witnesses. When you do, you'll see it's consistent with all the other evidence in the case. Ladies and gentlemen, you will also hear from victims of the defendant's fraud, people who were drawn into Miles Guo's online world. People who trusted Miles Guo, who believed the lies he told them, and who lost money, sometimes their life savings. As a result, people who eventually realized they were being scammed. Now the evidence. It's not going to come in all at once. You'll see it witness by witness, document by document, one piece at a time. But at the end of this trial, after you've heard the testimony and you've seen the evidence, you will see the full picture. This man conned thousands of investors and stole $1 billion. At the end of the trial, we'll have a chance to speak with you again. Between now and then, I'm going to ask you just to do three things. First, pay close attention to the evidence. Second, follow Judge Torres's instructions on the law. And third, use your common sense, the same common sense and good judgment that you use every day in your lives as New Yorkers. If you do those three things, you will reach the only verdict that is consistent with the evidence and the law. The defendant is guilty.
The court said, "Now we will have the opening statement on behalf of the defendant, Mr. Guo, by Ms. Sabrina Shroff."
Ms. Shrofa said, "Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. It was not a bet. It was not a scheme. It was not a con. It was none of those things. And the reason we are here today is not because the government brought an indictment. The reason we are here today is because Mr. Guo has pleaded not guilty to the indictment. And the evidence in this case will show all of the evidence, the witnesses that they bring in. As government counsel noted, one by one, the documents that come in one by one will lead you to only one conclusion. And the conclusion is that Mr. Guo is not guilty of the 12 counts brought in this indictment. I am here to tell you why there is no conspiracy, RICO or otherwise, and there is no enterprise. Mr. Guo is not guilty of the charges in this indictment. Before I do that, and before I speak more to what the evidence will show in this case, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Sabrina Shroff, and I, along with my colleagues, represent Miles Guo. Miles Guo is one of 8 children who started life with very little, born and raised in China. And that is in fact where he and his brothers and his family made a fortune in real estate. The evidence in this case will show that the fortune was humongous. And yes, the government would like you to draw many negative inferences from a person who, according to them, spent thousands of dollars on a TV or on a mattress. I ask you please, when you consider the evidence, consider the evidence within the context and not to be drawn in by the government's invitation to make judgment calls about people who have money and spend it in a way that you and I simply wouldn't. So let's talk about what the evidence in this case will show. The evidence in this case will show how Miles Guo, filled with a determination to accomplish a goal, he had a goal, and how he worked on that goal over a period of years. And the goal was to establish, to set up, to form, and to move forward a movement that would allow the people of China, the Chinese people, to know that there was an alternative to the Chinese Communist Party. And how the Chinese Communist Party could be removed so that everybody could live in a way that they chose to live. Mr. Guo, the evidence will show, did not have criminal intent, and when the evidence in this case is complete, you will see that what the government is trying to string together is not just a group of people to try and prove to you an existence of a conspiracy that really doesn't exist, but also asking you to make value judgments about how money is made and how money is spent. So let me start where the government had started. Let me talk about what the government spent the majority of the time today, and what the government will spend a majority of the time throughout this case on. The one person they ask you to convict, Miles Guo. He was raised in China, one of 8 boys. And each one of them grew up from nothing and made a fortune in real estate. The real estate fortune of the 8 brothers in China was not just worth millions. It was worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And you will hear that despite this incredible success, financial fortune that he had in China, Mr. Guo left China and came eventually and settled down in New York. And you will ask yourself, and the evidence will show why Mr. Guo left China. He left China because he'd taken on the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and they were not pleased with him at all. The Chinese Communist Party also had a goal, and they were very determined to make sure their goal was met. Their goal was to make sure Miles Guo stopped speaking about the CCP. Now you've heard from government counsel earlier today, and he has certainly invited you to make moral judgments, value judgments, all sorts of judgments, but what he has asked you to do at his core, he's asked you to receive from him almost a fiat that Mr. Guo lied. He wants you to accept that Mr. Guo lied so that people would give him money, and then wants you to accept that the only thing he did with that money is spent it on himself and his family. That is not this case, and that is not true. You are going to hear that, like almost every one of us. There's more than one aspect to Miles Guo, and some of the aspects and some of the things you will hear during the testimony in this case will be both surprising and eye-opening. So when you evaluate the evidence that comes in through the witnesses, when you think about Miles Guo's story, when you think about who Miles Guo is, I ask you, keep in mind and conceptualize the world that he lived in, because it is not our world. Our world is not filled with surveillance, constant harassment, and constant oversight and disruption by the Chinese Communist Party. You will hear testimony in this case from government witnesses that Mr. Guo was forced to leave China. He was forced to leave behind his wife and his daughter. Both were arrested and detained in prisons in China for almost 2 years. You will learn and you will have evidence that shows you that once Mr. Guo got to New York, instead of focusing on all the negatives that were before him and all the hurdles he had to face, what he did is, he started to and continued over time to speak out against the Chinese Communist Party. And that is what he did all the time, all day long. That was his goal, to get that story out. And repeatedly he said, and you will hear it through the trial, that the people of China are not the Communist Party. That is what he wanted to tell the people that were here in the United States, and the good-thinking people that he had to leave behind in China. What is it that he set out to do? He set out to start a movement and tell the truth about the CCP. And with that, he started to speak, he started to write, and he started to broadcast. And soon that came to be known amongst those who believed him and amongst those who followed him to be the whistleblower movement. And what did he talk about? He talked about things that he knew. He knew of the corruption in the CCP. And that's what he talked about. He knew certain secrets of corrupt government officials. And that's what he talked about, specifically. What else did he know? He knew the many ways in which the CCP worked. And he knew of the many ways that the CCP could make one's life hell. And one's professional life, and one's business life, and one's personal life. Now once Mr. Guo started talking about the CCP, the reaction to it was immediate and strong. And the reaction wasn't just from the people who were enthralled by what he had to say. There was another reaction too. There was a reaction by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. And they too had a goal. Their goal was to make sure that he stopped. So you see that most vividly when Mr. Guo, and the evidence will show, had a broadcast on April of 2017, April 19th of 2017, when he starts and gives a live interview on Voice of America. In face of relentless bullying by the CCP to stop, to be quiet, Mr. Guo decided to have a live feed interview on April 19th. The interview was, and his goal was, to broadcast in an uncensored, live manner so that nobody could doctor what he had to say. And what happened to this live interview? While he's still speaking in mid-speech, the feed is cut off. The line is cut off, and the interview is stopped. There is no warning. There is no notice. All of a sudden, all of the work he had put in to make sure this interview goes through, it's cut off. And what happens after that? What happens after that also gives you a context about the world in which Mr. Guo has to live and do business. Immediately after the April 19th interview, the Chinese Communist Party issues what is called a red notice. That is, a red notice is a warrant through the Interpol, seeking Mr. Guo's immediate arrest and extradition back to China. After that interview with Voice of America, his wife and his daughter are arrested in China by the Chinese police. He loses all access to social media. His YouTube account is cut off. His Twitter is cut off. And he has no access whatsoever to any methodology by which he can get his word out. What else do they cut off access to? They cut off access to any method by which he could get himself or his businesses any help. The CCP hacked his phones. Every cell phone he has, they hacked. They hacked his computers, his home computers, and his work computers. They even hacked the home and work computers of other people who are either assisting him or doing business with him. And this pattern of harassment by the CCP, and the evidence will show all of this pattern, escalates and becomes more and more sophisticated. So let me give you an example of how sophisticated this harassment can get. At one point, the CCP is so determined to shut down any and every bank account that the CCP starts to send money into these accounts in the names of people who are on the OFAC list. The OFAC list is a list set by the United States government that lists the names of people who have engaged in criminal conduct and are not allowed to use our banking system. The CCP uses those names to send in money, triggers a reaction from the compliance people in the bank. The bank shuts down all of his accounts because the monies being wired, they think, are in the name of known criminals on the OFAC list. You will hear all of this evidence from the government witnesses. And you will know that the CCP has 1,000 different ways to mess with Miles Guo and to try and stop the political movement that was really the essence of his entire being. The evidence will show why Mr. Guo continued in this movement, and why he endeavored to overcome each and every one of these hurdles. He was determined to make sure the movement survived. And he wanted to make sure others who wanted to join the movement were able to do so. So what did Mr. Guo do? He set up the Rule of Law Foundation and he set up the Rule of Law Society. He dedicated both those entities to make sure that they provided people with support to fight the propaganda given by the CCP. To give voice to the movement, he created a social media company. The government lawyer has spoken endlessly about it. GTV. What was GTV? GTV was a real company set up to spread the message of the whistleblower movement. The point of GTV was to get an uncensored voice out. Not to just the people of Chinese beliefs and systems who lived in the United States, but also the many people who were left behind in China who also wanted to be part of that movement. And that is what GTV offered them. Yes, GTV was the first of multiple business opportunities that aimed to spread the voice of the whistleblower movement. Mr. Guo participated in GTV, the Farm Loan Program, G-Clubs, and the Himalaya Exchange and its currencies, H-Coin and H-Dollar. These businesses were at the heart of the movement, and the government is simply wrong when it argues that they were not real businesses. The evidence in this trial will show that GTV was, unlike many others, a citizen-based journalism website. It allowed for people to speak openly and talk to each other without repercussions from the CCP. The Farm Loan Program. The Farm Loan Program, the evidence will show, not what this prosecutor has just told you, but it will show that the Farm Loan Program was a way for people to give their money at an interest rate to support the movement that they were interested in. And it was a way for people to earn money from these loans. I remind you, keep an eye on the time frame when all of this happened. United States and most of the world is in the midst of a pandemic, and people are eager to interact with each other online. What was G-Clubs? G-Clubs was what the government lawyer here mocks whether or not one should spend X amount of dollars on a sweatshirt or sweatpants. I think he said sweatpants. That is a person's choice. And that is exactly what China didn't want people to have and what the movement did want people to have, choice. You want to spend your money that way, that is entirely up to you. And what did G-Club's membership allow? It allowed a person, if they wanted, to support the movement at whatever price they wanted to support it. If you wanted to support it at the $10,000 level, you could, and if you wanted to support it at the $50,000 level, you could. The evidence will show, and I ask you, when the evidence comes in, do not take that invitation to make a moral or value judgment on what and how people should spend their money. The question is, does the evidence show the existence of real companies, the existence of real employees, the existence of people who did actual, real good work, the existence of people who dealt with the same problems you and I deal with at our jobs, trying to do the best job we can because we're chosen by people and bosses, because we have talent, expertise, and hard work, and those are the people that worked in each one of these companies. There is no denying at all that all of these entities were built around Mr. Guo's celebrity. Yes, and he was the one who started speaking as early as 2017 and continued speaking against the CCP. You know what else the evidence will show? That not just other people were the ones who invested. Mr. Guo's friends invested, Mr. Guo's family members invested. Why? Because they too believed in the movement. So they invested. They invested in GTV, they invested in the farm, they invested in G-Clubs. And they invested on the Himalaya Exchange. They believed. The evidence will show that these companies were built, were put together, just like any other business, maybe not with the same level of infrastructure, but people believed. And Mr. Guo, like many of us, had a vision, had an idea. What he did not quite have is the infrastructure that you and I bring to our daily lives. When he first started, he spoke very little or no English. He was new to this country. He wasn't familiar with the way things are done. And yes, you will hear recordings in which he speaks in a demanding voice, one instant, for work to get completed. And at sometimes even appears to be extremely pig-headed in a way that many a person is. Does that mean he's a criminal? No. Does that mean he committed these crimes? The evidence will show it does not. What the evidence, again, will show is that the people who he hired were people who were able to contribute to each one of these businesses. Now the government, I suppose, will spend some amount of time introducing evidence about two individuals, Yvette Wang and William J. And I ask you, as you hear the evidence the government puts in, to pay some and close attention to what roles each one of these people played. The testimony will show that Ms. Wang was the head of operations. She ran the day-to-day of each business. She was in charge of hiring. She did the best to hire people. And her hiring practices were the same as yours or mine. She hired people that she met along the way in her business. She hired people through a headhunter when she needed a person or a spot filled. And she was no more or no less committed and no more or no less demanding than any other chief executive officer that works. William J. is another name that the evidence will show, and William J. was the finance guy. He's a well-regarded investment banker who had managed the fortune not just of the Guo family fund, but he had managed the fortunes of many other companies. He had expertise, he had skill, and that is why he was the finance guy. And I've already talked at length about Mr. Guo, who was the ideas man. He came up with the ideas, and he put together the thought and the vision of what the movement that he believed in would look like. So you see, he wasn't alone in the movement. He wasn't moving all on his own. In fact, that's why it was called the whistleblower movement. The point of it was to have others join and participate. So what will the evidence show at the end of the day? The evidence will show that each one of these companies hired and had people working towards the existence of a real business. They believed, and Mr. Guo believed. Mr. Guo believed in this movement. So when the government lawyer asks you and tells you to believe that Mr. Guo defrauded the members of this movement, what the government is saying to you is that he intentionally misled supporters to steal money. The same money that they had given to the movement that he had devoted almost his entire life to. The movement for which he fled China, the movement for which he put up with being followed every day, the movement for which his phones were hacked, the movement for which his wife and his daughter sat in prison for 2 years, and the movement for which he was not allowed to leave and travel outside the United States, the movement for which he risked his very existence. That's what they're saying he set out to harm. They're saying that he set out to harm the very thing that was almost an extension, a symbiotic extension of who he was. And he did all of that, even though he had a fortune from a family fund that allowed him to live in luxury. What the government is asking you to believe is not just illogical, it defies common sense. I ask you to consider this. All of the evidence that the government lawyer talked about, the wealth, the millions of dollars worth of luxury hotel in Manhattan where he lived, the yacht, the mattress, whatever it is that he talked about, you know what the evidence is going to show. The evidence is going to show that no matter what else these witnesses say to you, Mr. Guo had that lifestyle long before the government even alleges that he committed this fraud. The suits, sweatpants, the house, the evidence will clearly show that has been his lifestyle for decades. Well before the government says he lost money and well before any of this was even a thought in the government's mind. And it certainly continues today and continued for days after because the family fund will always support Mr. Guo. And I ask you to consider this, because the government does invite you to make this value judgment. It is easy for a person to judge another as either shallow or rich, but shallow or rich does not make for a criminal. That does not mean that the government's inference is a proper one. The evidence will clearly show that Mr. Guo did not need to steal money to buy the Brioni suits. None of that would be worth all of the hardship he went through to keep the CCP at bay. What the evidence will show here is that Mr. Guo did not steal money from GV. He did not steal money from the farm loans program, he did not steal money from G clubs, and he did not steal money from the Himalaya exchange. The government will also invite you to think and invite you to conclude that the reason Mr. Guo did certain things are because he was engaged in criminal activity.
Continued on next page.
Ms. Schrofa said, so what else is the government going to elicit in terms of evidence? The government is going to seek to elicit that Mr. Guo had constant telephones that he changed. He had almost hundreds and hundreds of telephones. And that he had these telephones. And he changed his number constantly because he didn't want people to know what he was doing. I ask you to consider this. If you have been the target of constant hacking by the CCP, and if you have been the target of people listening in on your phones, using your voice recordings to impersonate you, wouldn't you also change your phones that often? If you were in constant fear of being threatened, kidnapped, killed, moved, would you also not have a car that does not tell people where and when you're going to be taken? It's logical that that is what a person who is being surveilled would live in that manner. If you were Mr. Guo and you were being constantly targeted, wouldn't you want a safe and secure place to have business meetings? Wouldn't you establish a base where people you wanted to do business with could come and meet with you without the interference and the distortion from the CCP? For every piece of evidence of wealth that they put in, you will have an equally fair inference that he took those steps not to cheat, not to indulge, but to make sure that the movement survived despite the distortions of the CCP. I ask you to keep in mind when they talk to you about bank accounts, MAWA, homes, ask yourself, why would a person have to open a bank account unless, of course, each time a bank account was owned, somebody from the OFAC list deposited money into your account and had compliance to them? That's the reason why Mr. Guo's actions must be evaluated in the context and the lifestyle in which he was supposed to exist. So the government will introduce the evidence. And I ask you to keep in mind that for each piece of evidence that comes into them, the necessary inference from them is not the accurate one. They ask you to infer from the filing of a bankruptcy that Mr. Guo simply did not have money. Now, whether we think it's fair or whether we think it unfair, the rich often declare bankruptcy. Personal bankruptcy does not mean poverty. None of that inference is correct. And I ask you, when you hear evidence of that, to consider how it is that Mr. Guo, who did not have any personal assets at that time, because the CCP was the one that had seized his property. There was a time, and you will hear evidence coming in, that Mr. Guo was to pay a fine of almost $100 million within a few days. And that is what leads to a filing of bankruptcy. But the government's request that from that you draw the conclusion of guilt, again, is a misplaced request. The government will argue throughout this case that what Mr. Guo did was simply unlawful. They will ask you to say you can be persecuted and you can still be a fraud. And when they ask you that, I ask you to think about how the evidence shows them to be wrong. The government isn't just saying that there is a fraud. What the government is asking you to do is to conclude that Mr. Guo defrauded essentially himself because he is the movement, and the movement him. So when they ask you to take a look at the evidence that comes in, the evidence of wealth, the evidence of spending, the evidence of luxury, I ask you to evaluate all of that evidence in the context which I have described. And if you do so, and if you evaluate the evidence, understanding how difficult it was for these entities to survive, and how each one of the people who worked for these entities worked hard to maintain and forward a movement, you will reach the only logical conclusion in this case, that Mr. Guo is not guilty of the 12 counts of the indictment. Thank you.
The court said, members of the jury, I want to remind you about our trial schedule. Every day, every weekday, you'll be entering the courtroom at 9:30 in the morning. By 9 o'clock, you'll have a light breakfast available to you, so you can come early. But you must be ready to enter the courtroom at 9:30. So in general, we'll take a half-hour break between 11:30 and 12, and I will also have a light lunch for you. And then we'll go until 2:45. By condensing the schedule this way, I don't take up your entire day until 5 p.m. I'm very aware that you have other important things to do during the day, and so that is why I've designed the schedule in this way. So at this time we will take our half of an hour break.
Jury not present.
The court said, you may be seated. Counsel, is there anything before we return in half of an hour?
Mr. Ferguson said, no, Your Honor.
The court said, you're ready with your first witness?
Mr. Ferguson said, yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Kamraju said, not from the defense, Your Honor.
The court said, all righty.
Luncheon recess. Continued on next page. Afternoon session 12:10 p.m. At sidebar.
The court said, I have a note from juror number 192. I don't remember his number, his actual number on the jury.
Mr. Kamraju said, it makes sense that he's an alternate.
Mr. Barkan said, 192 is alternate 5, Your Honor.
The court said, okay. Alternate 5. To the Honorable A. Torres, I am profoundly disappointed that my excuse for dismissal wasn't granted. My request began with I am a working single father. My child will have field trips, Father's Day, tea ceremony, and graduation, and I will now not be able to attend. When school ends on June 18th, I will not be able to take her to camp. My family is far away and not able to assist regularly. I am a widower. My wife passed away in childbirth, so being able to something my child is very important. I've just learned about the need to gather at a location at an agreed upon time. I dropped my child off at 8 a.m. Any adjustments brought in will cost me, my family and job gravely. not to mention thousands of dollars. I did not detail my work position and how I am required to be at my job. I thought my reasonable request based on my home and living situation would have been sufficient. To the attorneys, I appreciate the confidence you have in my selection. You have royally screwed me over. Juror number 192.
Ms. Strofa said, he's the gentleman who served on Judge McMahon's jury. I think he said that when he was being voir dired.
The court said, what would you like me to do?
Ms. Strofa said, I say we let him go. We have 6. We can live with 5.
Mr. Finkel said, so, Your Honor, the government is fine with 5 alternates. However, we defer to the court on the appropriateness on how to deliver the message. And the government's concern would be sending a message to the rest of the jury that merely sending a letter to the court would allow them to be excused from service. The government has no objection to proceeding with 5 alternates. And just ask the court to use its discretion and its experience on how to the timing of how to deliver the message.
The court said, so I am also told that the jurors are not pleased with the arrangement that they meet at a pickup point and be taken by car to the courthouse, which I think is acceptable.
Mr. Kamraju said, fine with us, Your Honor.
The court said, so this juror, alternate number 5, does not know about that offered alternative yet. I could always bring him in and ask him if that change would make it acceptable to him, see what he says.
Ms. Strofa said, we leave it up to the court, if the court wants to ask him. But he seems royally, as he puts it, pissed off. So my inclination would be to let him go. But perhaps the court could consider if we just let him sit through the day, and then we let him know just not to come on Monday. And then assume that, either tell the jury that, this is the new pool and provide no explanation. So that they don't think somebody got away with something.
The court said, I definitely will have him sit through the day, and I will speak with him after we're finished for the day. Okay.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, one application before we leave. Just that the location where the jurors are going to meet be sealed in public record for the reasons that the government stated in its motion. And that the location where the jurors are going to meet not be shared with the defendant.
The court said, I think that is totally appropriate.
Ms. Strofa said, we don't even know where they were going to meet, so we have nothing to share.
The court said, okay, so those items will be sealed.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you, Your Honor.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, would you have the jurors return to the courtroom, please?
Jury present.
The court said, please be seated. Will the government call its first witness?
Mr. Finkel said, yes, Your Honor. The government calls Erin McNamara.
Erin McNamara, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows.
The court said, please state your name and spell it.
The witness said, Erin, E-R-I-N, McNamara, M-C-N-A-M-A-R-A.
The court said, please draw the microphone towards you. You can bend it if you like. You may inquire.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you, Your Honor.
Direct examination. By Mr. Finkel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Where do you work?
I'm a special agent with the FBI in the New Haven field office.
How long have you been with the FBI?
26 years.
What, if anything, did you do before you were an FBI agent?
I was an auto underwriter with State Farm.
Special Agent McNamara, what is ERT?
It's an evidence response team.
Can you please describe to the members of the jury what the evidence response team does?
Sure. Evidence response teams, they are bureau-wide. They are people who are additionally trained in crime scene management and forensic evidence collection.
Special Agent McNamara, what role, if any, do you have with ERT?
I'm the senior team leader for the New Haven team.
What is a search warrant?
A search warrant is a document that's obtained from a judge, usually an investigator gets it. It explains what it is that you are allowed to search, and what it is that you are allowed to search for and seize.
Special Agent McNamara, I want to direct your attention to March 15, 2023. In connection with your role at ERT, what, if anything, did you do that day?
We executed a search warrant at 373 Taconic Road in Greenwich, Connecticut.
What sort of neighborhood is Greenwich, Connecticut?
It's a very affluent neighborhood.
How would you describe 373 Taconic Road?
It's beautiful, beautiful mansion. Very large, beautiful yard, pool, tennis courts. And I believe it even bordered a golf course.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, we can display for the witness what's been marked for identification as GX-133. Special Agent McNamara, what is GX-133?
That's an aerial view of 373 Taconic Road in Greenwich.
Is that a fair and accurate photograph of 373 Taconic Road in Greenwich?
Yes.
Mr. Finkel said, government offers 133.
The court said, no objection?
Ms. Schrofa said, no, Your Honor.
The court said, admitted.
Government's Exhibit 133 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, if we could publish it, please, Ms. Loftus. Special Agent McNamara, was the weather the day that you were at 373 Taconic the same as what we see on the screen?
No, there was snow on the ground.
Approximately what time did you arrive at 373 Taconic on March 15th?
Around 7 a.m.
And when you arrived, did the FBI have a search warrant?
Yes.
For what?
For 373 Taconic Road and its grounds.
Did the FBI have an arrest warrant that day?
Yes.
For who?
Miles Guo.
Was Miles Guo present at 373 Taconic?
No.
Were there individuals besides FBI personnel present at 373 Taconic?
Yes, there were 3 residents. There were an older female, a younger female, and a male. And my understanding was it was the wife, daughter, and the daughter's boyfriend.
Wife, daughter, and daughter's boyfriend of whom?
Of Mr. Guo.
What were their names?
Ms. Schrofa said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may state that. You may answer.
The daughter was May.
Ms. Schrofa said, may we approach for a moment, please?
The court said, all right.
Ms. Schrofa said, thank you.
At sidebar.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, the daughter's name is immaterial. She has been the subject of a lot of online and offline harassment. She's not even in court today because she does not want to be identified. She has made no court appearances, even though she's dedicated to her father because she is constantly harangued. We have not once raised an objection to their witnesses' names not being disclosed. And there is no relevance to what her name is. It's not pertinent at all to any questioning here. Her name could be Sonia Gandhi, for all I care, but her real name does not need to be used.
Mr. Finkel said, it is pertinent because her name is on documents, as is the name of the wife. As is the name of the daughter's boyfriend or fiancé. In addition, I should note it is relevant here. Ms. Schroff opened on the fact of the wife and the daughter and their relationship with him. Her name is on documents. We need to explain who she is. It's relevant.
The court said, the harassers already know her name.
Ms. Schrofa said, she's not here in court. She didn't come to court to support her father because she's being harassed. Your Honor, and I did not refer to her by name in my opening for a specific reason, which is obvious why I didn't use the wife's name and the daughter's name. And I think the record speaks for itself on that point.
The court said, so the fact that these names are on documents makes her name relevant. But also, the Chinese Communist Party jailed the wife and daughter. I'm sure they know the name, plus a lot of other information. The objection is overruled.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, it's not the Chinese Communist Party, it's quote/unquote victims.
The court said, overruled Ms. Schroff.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Thank you."
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, "You may answer."
The daughter was Mei, Mei, Guo, Guo. The mother, I only recall her last name was Ngok, Ngok. And the male, it was Chao, Cao.
Do you remember the male's first name?
I do not.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, if we can display for the witness 3514 to 48. If you can please go to page 2 of that. Actually, Your Honor, may I approach?
The court said, "You may."
Special Agent McNamara, can you look at your screen towards the bottom? And the question is whether that refreshes your recollection as to the daughter's boyfriend's first name.
Yes. Please.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, can you bring that down? Special Agent McNamara, what is the daughter's boyfriend's first name?
Defeng, Defeng.
Special Agent McNamara, what was your role with respect to the search at 373 Taconic?
I was a coordinator. I made sure we had the materials we needed. Assignments as to who would photograph, answer questions. Just sort of made sure that the search kept moving, and that everything was completed.
And what were the sort of items that the team was looking for?
Electronics like cell phones, computers, business records, financial records, photographs. Things of that nature.
By the way, Special Agent McNamara, aside from your involvement in this search on March 15th, were you involved in the investigation concerning Miles Guo?
No.
If you were not involved in the Miles Guo investigation, can you explain to the members of the jury why? If at all, you were participating in a search that day?
Sure. It was a request by New York. They had multiple search warrants. So they needed assistance conducting this one. And since it's in Greenwich, it's in our territory in Connecticut. So they asked us for assistance. They asked us to provide people and supplies and things that were needed to conduct the search.
Does that happen somewhat commonly within the FBI?
Yes.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, at this time I'd like to read a stipulation to the parties.
The court said, "Go ahead." Before you read the stipulation though, I'd like to let the jurors know what a stipulation is. A stipulation is an agreement between both sides to present evidence to the jury, without calling a witness for the purpose of discussing the subject matter. Go ahead.
Mr. Finkel said, It is hereby stipulated and agreed by the United States of America and Miles Guo. The defendant, if called as a witness at trial, a special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, would testify as follows, on March 15, 2023. Special agents and other FBI employees executed a judicially authorized search of 373 Taconic Road, Greenwich, Connecticut. During the course of that search, FBI personnel took photographs of exterior and interior spaces of 373 Taconic Road, Greenwich, Connecticut, and also lawfully seized documents and electronic devices. Government exhibits GXCT 20 through GXCT 30, GXCT 35 through GXCT 72, GXCT 74 through GXCT 105 are fair and accurate photographs of interior and exterior spaces of 373 Taconic Road, Greenwich, Connecticut, that were lawfully captured by an FBI photographer on March 15, 2023, when conducting the search. Following the March 15, 2023 search, FBI personnel scanned and photographed documents that were lawfully seized during the search. GXCT 101 through GXCT 129, GXCT 157 through GXCT 187, GXCT 190 through GXCT 202, and GXCT 204 through GXCT 207 are true and correct copies of documents that were seized during the March 15, 2023 search of 373 Taconic Road, Greenwich, Connecticut. It is further stipulated and agreed that this stipulation, which is GXSTIP-1, may be received into evidence as a government exhibit at trial, and it's signed by the parties. With that, Your Honor, the government offers GXSTIP-1.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit STIP-1 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, and the government offers GXCT-20 through GXCT-30, GXCT-35 through 72, GXCT-74 through 105, GXCT-101 through 129, GXCT-157 through 187, GXCT-190 through 202, and GXCT-204 through 207.
The court said, they are admitted.
Government's Exhibits CT-20 through CT-30, CT-35 through 72, CT-74 through 105, CT-101 through 129, CT-157 through 187, CT-190 through 202, CT-204 through 207 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you.
By Mr. Finkel.
Special Agent McNamara, did you see every aspect of 373 Taconic on March 15, 2023?
I did not.
How long did the search take?
Just under 4 hours.
Mr. Finkel said, we can please display what's in evidence as Government Exhibit GXCT-87. Special Agent McNamara, what is the jury looking at in GXCT-87?
That's an exterior photo of 373 Taconic Road.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can pull up, please, Ms. Loftus, GXCT-25. It's not on your screen. If you can publish that, please. Ms. Loftus. It wasn't published. Thank you. Sorry about that. Special Agent McNamara, what is GXCT-25?
That's another exterior photo of 373 Taconic Road, the rear of the house.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, if we can please publish GXCT-91. Special Agent McNamara, what is GXCT-91?
This is a side of the house, the side with the 2 garages.
Did there come a time during the search of 373 Taconic when you entered the garages that we're looking at in GXCT-91?
Yes.
Which garage?
Both.
What, if anything, were in the garages?
In the garage to the right in the photo, as you're looking at it, was a red Lamborghini.
Mr. Finkel said, if you can please display GXCT-95. Special Agent McNamara, is this the garage that you went inside and saw the red Lamborghini?
Yes.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can please display GXCT-38. Sorry. It looks like our computer froze. Bear with us. Apologies. While we're waiting for the computer to wake up, which happens, sorry, Special Agent McNamara, what, if anything, happened to the Lamborghini on March 15, 2023?
It was seized.
And was that pursuant to a warrant?
A seizure warrant, yes.
And was the FBI able to locate the keys to the Lamborghini?
Yes.
And where were they?
Inside the house.
Did you see the keys that day?
I did.
Special Agent McNamara, what is a VIN number?
It's a vehicle identification number. It's a number that's unique to each vehicle.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can please display GXCT-42. Special Agent McNamara, approximately how many FBI personnel participated in the search?
Around 40.
And did you walk from one side of the home to the other?
I did not, no, not on every floor, no, I did not.
On any of the floors, did you?
The first floor.
How long did it take to get from one side to the other?
I don't know. I was stopped multiple times from one end to the other.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can please display Ms. Loftus, GXCT 41. Special Agent McNamara, did the 373 Taconic appear to be a home that was lived in?
Yes.
Why was that?
There were clothes, shoes, food, toiletries, dogs. They had 2 dogs. Dog beds.
Mr. Finkel said, just going to wait for our computer to cooperate so we can continue. All right. Special Agent McNamara, what are we looking at in GXCT 41?
That's the VIN number on the Lamborghini in the garage.
Does ERT have any practices or procedures with respect to VIN numbers on cars?
Yes, we always photo the VIN number because it's a unique identifier. Like a serial number on a computer.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, may I approach?
The court said you may.
Mr. Finkel said, I've handed the witness what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 36. Special Agent McNamara, can you look at Government Exhibit 36, please?
It's keys to a Lamborghini.
And do those keys have any uniquely identifying marks?
There's a partial VIN number on the tag.
And what is the end of the partial VIN number?
10,393.
Does that match the VIN number in GXCT 41?
It does.
Mr. Finkel said, Government offers 36.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit 36 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, may I publish it to the jury?
The court said you may.
Mr. Finkel said, If we can display for the witness, please, Government Exhibit GXCT 209. Just for the witness. Special Agent McNamara, from where were the keys recovered?
It was a room. I would call it like an office/security room. There were monitors for the security cameras in there. And a desk.
Mr. Finkel said, One moment, please. Mr. Finkel said, GXCT 209, please, for the witness. Special Agent McNamara, what is GXCT 209?
That's another photograph from the search.
Is that a fair and accurate photograph of what you saw on March 15, 2023?
Yes.
Mr. Finkel said, Government offers CT 209.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit CT 209 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, Can you please publish that? The jury can see it? No. Now you can. Okay. Great. Special Agent McNamara, do you know what those flags are?
No.
Mr. Finkel said, We can now please display what's in evidence as Government Exhibit CT 58. Special Agent McNamara, what are we looking at in GXCT 58?
A photograph of one of the rooms in the house at 373 Taconic Road.
And what, if anything, was in that room besides what we're looking at?
Oh, cameras. Like a video cameras.
Do you know why there are video cameras in there?
No.
Mr. Finkel said, Please look at, Ms. Loftus, GXCT 59. What is GXCT 59?
That's another photo of that room, that same room.
Mr. Finkel said, If we can please, Ms. Loftus, show just the witness GXCT 208. This is just for the witness, please. Special Agent McNamara, what are we looking at in GXCT 208?
That's another photograph from the search. That's what I would call the living room.
Mr. Finkel said, Government offers GXCT 208.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit CT 208 received in evidence.
Mr. Finkel said, Publish that please, Ms. Loftus. If we can please display Government Exhibit GXCT 83, which is in evidence. Do you know what those insignias on the clothing are?
No.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, if we can display GXCT 80. 80, please. 80. This is in evidence. Jury able to see that? No. Can we publish that to the jury, please? Are these some of the closets that you mentioned before?
Yes.
Special Agent McNamara, you said some documents were recovered that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you review the documents?
No.
Did other members of the team?
No.
What happened to the documents after they were collected on March 15th, 2023? Do you know?
They were collected, they were packaged, and they were handed over to New York.
And the New York field office was running this investigation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, objection to the leading.
The court said, you can ask who was leading the investigation.
By Mr. Finkel.
Special Agent McNamara, which field office, if any, was leading the investigation in this matter to your understanding?
New York.
Mr. Finkel said, we can please display what's in evidence and for the witness and the jury GXCT 201. If you can go to the second page, please. Special Agent McNamara, can you read what it says at the top?
Brioni, 688 Madison Avenue, New York, New York, 10065. Telephone number, 21237657777.
What does it say in that green cell at the top of the chart?
Invoice from Mr. Miles Kwok Bespoke Order.
Do you know what Brioni is?
No.
Mr. Finkel said, if we can go to the next page please, Ms. Loftus. Page 4 rather. Can you zoom in on that? We can go to page 5, please. And if you can please pull up what's in evidence as GXCT 205. I'm sorry, 207. Excuse me. This should be published so the jury can see it. If we can go to the next page, please. And can you zoom in at the top, please, Ms. Loftus? Special Agent McNamara, can you read up to background?
Execution version. Loan agreement. This agreement is made on the 3rd day of June 2020. Between GTV Media Group Incorporated, the lender, a Delaware corporation with office address at 162 East 64th Street, New York. New York, 10065, and Soraka Media Group Incorporated, the borrower. A Delaware corporation with office address at 162 East 64th Street, New York, New York, 10065. Each a party together parties.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, if you can go to the last page of this document, please. Can you zoom in on that? And who is the authorized signatory according to this document? Special Agent McNamara. For Soraka Media Group Incorporated?
I'm going to mispronounce this. Chong, Qiang, Guo.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you, Ms. Loftus. If we can bring up, please, GXCT 198 for the parties and the jury. And if you can go to the next page of that, please. Special Agent McNamara, can you read this document, please?
Dear Mr. Harry Eccles Williams, I am writing this letter to request and to put into consent for the release of all my files from your firm to Chongqua as soon as possible. Most importantly, the relationship between me and Appleby, the relationship between Well Origin and Appleby. Thank you. Yours sincere, Ho Won Kwok.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, if we can bring up, please, GXCT 157 for the jury and the parties. That's fine. Right there as you have it. Special Agent McNamara, can you read the top of that, please?
G-Talks program.
Can you read down where it says 7:48 a.m.?
Welcome by host, Limari Reyes.
Who's Limari Reyes?
I have no idea.
Mr. Finkel said, we can display please GXCT 172. That's fine, Ms. Loftus. Special Agent McNamara, can you read the top of GXCT 172?
List of do not words / I'm sorry, ideas.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, Can you scroll down a little bit? Special Agent McNamara, do you see where it says, loans?
Yes.
Can you read the words that follow? Loans.
Partner or partners, growth projections, venture, partnership, future investment benefits. Future opportunities, participation in business or profits, GTV, Soraka, voice of voice of good, VOG. Rule of Law Foundation, Rule of Law Society, Canada Himalaya, Jang Yun Fu, Lude, Yvette Wong Yvette, Sarah, Mulan, SEC. Investigation, litigations, Golden Spring, regulators, DOJ.
What is DOJ?
Department of Justice.
What is SEC?
Securities Exchange Commission.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, if we can bring up, please, GXCT 174. Can you read where it says 8:20 a.m.?
Live Q&A by Mr. Miles Guo, pre-selected questions.
Mr. Finkel said, Ms. Loftus, if you can display for the witness only GXCT 210. Special Agent McNamara, what is GXCT 210?
It's one of the photographs from the search.
Mr. Finkel said, government offers GXCT 210.
Ms. Shrofa said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, if you'll step up, please.
Mr. Finkel said, I can lay an additional foundation. How do you recognize this photograph as one of the photographs from the search?
I reviewed the photographs.
Okay. Did you see this particular area of 373 Taconic on the day that the search was conducted?
I don't recollect.
Okay. Does the FBI maintain photographs that are taken during a search in the regular course of FBI's business?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection. What the FBI generally does is not relevant.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
And you said that you reviewed the photographs from the search. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Ms. Shrofa said, objection to the leading.
The court said, overruled. You may continue.
So we maintained a copy of photographs from the search. When I was asked to come here, I reviewed this to refresh my memory of the search.
And the photographs that were part of the search, are they maintained in FBI's records and kept that way?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, objection. She has no personal knowledge.
The court said, step up.
Continued on next page. At sidebar.
The court said, so she is familiar with the photographs from the search.
Mr. Finkel said, so, Your Honor, she was the team lead and she's familiar with the ERT, including its record-keeping practices. For one, I think she recognizes parts of the photograph. But that's neither here nor there. She can lay an 8036 foundation as a photograph that was taken at the search. She knows it was stored with the other photographs of the search. I'll lay that foundation that it was taken by someone with knowledge of the matter at the time it occurred and kept in the course of the FBI's business. It's one photograph. We can lay the foundation.
Ms. Shrofa said, the government knows full well it has a problem here. They asked me this morning to stipulate to it coming into evidence and I declined because they are unable to lay a foundation. The fact that...
The court said, what is wanting in the foundation?
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, number 1, she didn't take the photograph. Number 2, she didn't view the evidence. Number 3, she didn't view that particular scene. Number 4. The only reason she's able to testify this way is because of the government giving her the photos that they took from other members of the FBI team and showed it to her. She has zero personal knowledge of this particular photograph. And nothing about a photograph being in an FBI file falls under the exception of a business record. Either she has personal knowledge of this or she doesn't, and clearly she doesn't, Your Honor. Additionally,
the court said, isn't this kept in the regular course of business?
Ms. Shrofa said, it doesn't fall within that exception because the exception is supposed to capture something that is, 1. A business record, which this is not. This is evidence gathering. And documents gathered by the FBI are by definition self-serving because they are prepared in the course of a litigation. But they do not technically fall within the business records exception. Number 2, the way this photograph is taken. It is not a photograph of a scene that is in the home. So what they've done is they've gone through the entire house, pulled out all the sunglasses, laid them on a table, and then taken a photograph. You can see that clearly from the photograph and from the cases that are stacked up next to them. So this particular person did not do the underlying search for the sunglasses, did not place the sunglasses there. And she has zero personal knowledge of any of this.
The court said, but the photograph was taken during the course of the search.
Ms. Schrofa said, she wouldn't know that. It could have been the search, it could have been another search. It could have been a search before that. She doesn't know when this photograph was taken.
Mr. Finkel said, if I may just make a few points. First of all, if necessary, we can bring another person to simply authenticate one photograph. The parties have worked quite well in good faith on stipulating authenticity. Suddenly that changed this morning. Number 1, I believe if I ask the witness, do you recognize any components of this photograph? She will say, I know the door, and that was from the room. A witness does not have to be the one to take a photograph to get it into evidence. The witness does not have to be the one to move things around if that's, in fact, what happened to get it into evidence. If Ms. Schroff wants to cross her on how the sunglasses were arranged, if that is, in fact, correct, I don't know, she can do that. It's just an admissibility question.
The court said, so she may be able to testify as to the door, but she certainly can't testify as to the rest of the room and how these sunglasses were positioned.
Ms. Schrofa said, we would have no objection.
Mr. Finkel said, excuse me.
Ms. Schrofa said, to the photo of the door.
Mr. Finkel said, excuse me. That would be appropriate cross. This goes to the weight of the document. Excuse me. This goes to the weight of the document, not to admissibility. In either case, I can lay an 8036 foundation. She's familiar with the case file, and she's familiar with how the records are stored. That's one photograph. I'll just leave it at that.
The court said, so she can identify the room, but she cannot identify these objects.
Mr. Finkel said, okay. So I'll lay an 8036 foundation.
The court said, okay.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor?
The court said, we're done.
Continued on next page. In open court. By Mr. Finkel.
Special Agent McNamara, when a search is conducted by the FBI, what happens to the photographer's photos?
The photographer takes the SD card out of the camera, places it into a tower. It's not a computer, it's a tower where you just burn, you can do like 4 copies at a time. Southwest that they place that in there. We burn the copies. The first copy is the original. And that goes into original envelope of original evidence envelope, a 1A envelope we call it. It gets attached to the file. The second is the backup copy, that also gets put into the file. The third copy is one we would send to the case agent for a working copy, so they wouldn't have to go and remove those physically from the file to review it. And if there were items that were being sent to the lab, we would also burn a copy to send with those items to the lab for review.
The court said, I'd like you to get closer to the microphone. You can bring it closer, you can sit closer. And speak up.
And the copies of photographs? Which field office, if any, were they sent to?
New York.
Mr. Finkel said, we can please display, Ms. Loftus, Government Exhibit GXCT 129. This is in evidence. And if we can please go to page 17. I just want to make sure it's published for the jury. If you can zoom in just for the top half, please, Ms. Loftus.
Continued on next page. By Mr. Finkel.
Can you read that, please, Special Agent McNamara?
Declaration of Trust and Agreement. The declaration of trust and agreement. This trust and agreement is made on December 2020 between Guo, the beneficiary, an individual holding Cyprus passport number blank, residing at blank, London, United Kingdom, and Kinmin Je, the trustee, an individual holding Hong Kong passport no. KJ01684111, residing at 87 Balmoral House, Earl's Way, London, United Kingdom, each a party, together parties.
And you can continue reading, please.
Background. The trustee agrees to hold the shares of the following companies, each the company. Together. The companies, registered in the name of the trustee for and on behalf of the beneficiary. 1. Himalaya Currency Clearing Proprietary Limited, a company registered in Australia with the company number 642418684. 2. Himalaya Reserves Proprietary Limited, a company registered in Australia with company number 642487232. Himalaya, sorry. 3. Himalaya Currency, I think it's party, I'm sorry, Limited, a company registered in Australia with company number 643817449. 4. Major Lead International, Limited, a company registered in British Virgin Islands with company number 1976621.
Mr. Finkel said, "Can you zoom in, please, Ms. Loftus? Can you read number 3, please, Special Agent McNamara?" Mr. Finkel said, "Ms. Loftus, if you can zoom in on number 3.
The trustee further covenants with the beneficiary, 3.1, to keep the company at all times solvent unless instructed otherwise by the beneficiary, and to comply with all applicable rules and regulations that the company requires. 3.2, to keep the company active on the relevant registry at all times, and pay on time all applicable fees which will be reimbursed by the beneficiary. 3.3, not to assign or part with possession of the company to any third party without the prior written approval of the beneficiary."
Mr. Finkel said, "Ms. Loftus, you can zoom out of that, please, and go to the next page. And the next page, please. And can you read the sign names next to where it says signed?"
Signed by Guo. Signed by Kinmin Je. Witnessed by blank. Down.
Mr. Finkel said, "Thank you. Ms. Loftus, you can take that just one moment, Your Honor. Can you please display, Ms. Loftus? Government Exhibit GXCT 176. And Special Agent McNamara, can you read starting where it says, draw?"
Draw G, I'm sorry, G fashion items, designer 1 whistle, pants, 100, hat, 200.
Mr. Finkel said, "If you can please go, Ms. Loftus, GXCT 184. Next page, please. Keep going. Stop right there. What sort of document is it?"
It's a vehicle title.
"What's a vehicle title?"
It's something that you have to, shows your ownership and it's registered with the state.
"What's the name of the owner listed on this?"
It's Cao, Cao, Defeng, Defeng.
Did you see Chao Defeng or Defeng Chao on March 15, 2023?
Yes.
And what type of car is this?
Lamborghini.
What's the model?
Aventador.
And what is the last 4 digits of the VIN, or vehicle identification number?
0393.
Mr. Finkel said, "Ms. Loftus, if you can please display GXCT 41. What are the last 4 digits of this vehicle identification number on the Lamborghini?"
0393.
Mr. Finkel said, "Nothing further at this time. Thank you."
The court said, "Cross-examination?"
Ms. Schrofa said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Cross-examination by Ms. Schrofa.
Good afternoon, Special Agent.
Good afternoon.
Ms. McNamara, before March 15th, did you know anything about Mr. Miles Guo?
No.
And you prepared, I take it, right, to execute the search on March 15th?
Prepared the search supplies and things of that nature, yes.
Right. And you had a plan in place, correct?
Yes.
And prior to executing the search, you met with or emailed with the members of the team that were going to accompany you, correct?
Yes.
You discussed where Mr. Guo might be on March 15th, correct?
I don't believe so.
You did not discuss which one of the 3 homes you thought he might be in.
I don't recall that.
Do you recall, sitting here today, on what date you started preparing to execute the search?
It was either earlier that week or late the prior week. I believe.
And you emailed, did you not, with other members, including somebody named Robin, correct?
I don't know who Robin is.
Robin Cartwright?
Rachel Cartwright.
I'm sorry?
Rachel.
Rachel, Robin, you emailed with her, right?
Yes. She's the one that requested our assistance.
And in emailing with her, the plan was for her to exchange information with you, and you to exchange information with her, correct?
Information about how we were going to conduct the search, yes.
Right. And you knew you were going to search a home, correct?
Yes.
And you knew it was a large home, correct?
Yes.
And you knew the home could have Mr. Guo in it, correct?
Yes.
And you were planning to arrest Mr. Guo, correct?
I was not.
Well, somebody on your team was going to arrest Mr. Guo, correct?
No one on my team does arrests. We simply do searches.
Okay. And you testified earlier that you didn't recall whether or not you anticipated where Mr. Guo would be. So let me approach with something that might refresh your recollection. That would be 3514 to 24. Does that refresh your recollection, ma'am, that you were anticipating Mr. Guo not being in the Connecticut home?
No.
And it is fair to say that you interacted via email with several individuals, all coordinating the search of this place, right?
Yes.
And that's 373. I have trouble pronouncing the street, Taconic Road. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you wanted to go there early in the morning, correct?
Yeah. I did not choose the time.
Okay. But in any event, you were there before 7 o'clock. Is that fair to say?
No. We arrived around 7 o'clock.
And it's fair to say that the home itself is not one that you had access to, correct?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
I don't understand.
The court said, overruled.
Ms. Schrofa said, I'll rephrase, Your Honor. You couldn't get in through the gate, right? Your team couldn't get in through the gate, correct?
Yes, we could. The gate was open when we arrived.
The gate to the home was open.
Yes. When my team arrived, the gate was open.
And how many teams preceded you?
The team that was doing the entry.
The team that was doing the entry, correct?
Yes.
And the team that was doing the entry was coordinating with the team that was following, which is your team, correct?
When they finished their entry and it was secured, they let us know that we can then proceed to the location.
Right. And did the team that was doing the entry tell you that it was Mr. Guo's daughter who let them in?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
The
court said, you don't need to answer.
When you entered the home, did you see Mr. Guo's daughter and wife seated outside on a bench?
No.
When was the first time you saw Mr. Guo's daughter and wife in that home?
Inside the house.
Where were they seated inside the house?
I would call it like a family room.
And they were put there by the team that entered before you, correct?
I don't know. I was not there.
You don't know because you weren't there. And when you entered the house, did you go from room to room in the home?
When I first entered the house.
Yes.
When I first entered the house, I went towards where the residents were to find Supervisory Special Agent Cartwright to let her know that we were there.
Because she was the first entry team, right?
I don't know.
You don't know who the first entry team was?
I don't know who was on the entry team. I followed the entry team. That was not part of the search.
So you followed the entry team, correct? And the entry team told you that the location was secure, correct?
We were at a staging location. When the entry team told us it was secure, then we drove to the residence.
And how many of you drove together?
I can only speak for my team. There were probably a dozen of us or so.
You just said you can only speak for your team, correct?
Right. You asked who drove together, that's who I drove with, my team.
Okay. Did any members of your team take any of the photographs you testified to?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll get to the photographs in a minute. But let's just stay with your entry into the home. Okay. When you entered the home, it looked, as you said, like a home that was lived in, correct?
Yes.
There was food on the kitchen table, correct?
There was food, yes.
Yes. And there were 3 people in the home, correct?
Yes.
And the 3 people were Mr. Guo's wife, correct?
Yes.
His daughter, correct?
Yes.
And his daughter's fiancé, correct?
I was told boyfriend, but yes.
Okay. And did you see the boyfriend who was in crutches in the bedroom, or did somebody tell you about that?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Sure. During your search, did you see his daughter's boyfriend?
Yes. They were all in that room together.
Okay. And he was on crutches, correct?
Oh, crutches, yes. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you.
That's okay. A lot of people misunderstand me. But he was on crutches, right?
Yes, he had crutches with him.
Right. And there were 2 dogs, 2 small poodle-like dogs in the home, correct?
Yes.
And they had all been placed in that one room, correct?
No. I took the daughter upstairs to go get the dogs.
Okay. So you took the daughter upstairs so that she could retrieve the dogs. And you brought his daughter back down and put her back in that room, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you had them stay there while the rest of your team searched the whole home, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You gave her a copy of the search warrant, I'm assuming?
I did not.
Okay. But she didn't stand in the way of you searching the home, right?
No, she did not.
Neither did the boyfriend who was on crutches, correct?
Correct.
And certainly the wife didn't stand in the way, correct?
Correct.
His wife is about 60 years old, is that right?
I have no idea.
Wasn't she nervous when you watched her?
I didn't watch her. I saw her briefly. I spoke with the daughter, I took her to get the dogs. Brought them back down, I let her know that, if she needed to bring them out to feed them. It's not a problem, just let us know, and then we proceeded.
And then you started to search the house. You said there were at least about 20 other people, correct?
Yeah. Oh, at least.
Okay. And when you say at least, were there more than 20?
I think we had approximately 40 people searching.
Okay. So you had 40 people searching, 3 residents in the home, right?
Yes.
And nobody interfered with your search?
No.
Okay. At the time that you executed the search at 373, that's what I'm going to call it. Okay. Did you know how many other homes Mr. Guo had?
No.
Did you know he had a home in New York City?
I know that they were doing other warrants at the same time. I'm not sure which homes he owned or where he lived.
Okay. At the time that you executed the search, did you know Mr. Guo to have a lawyer?
I have no idea.
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, overruled.
At the time that you went to search Mr. Guo's home, did you know anything about his status in the United States?
Mr. Finkel said, objection.
The court said, if you'll step up, please.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, so this is beyond the direct.
Ms. Strofa said, I'm happy to call her as my own witness then, Your Honor. But I'm allowed to have some latitude about what she knew when she executed the search warrant. I'd be happy to be more constrained, Your Honor, but...
The court said, so whether he had a lawyer, I allowed that, but now going into his immigration status, I think that's just going beyond.
Ms. Strofa said, well, she took hundreds of documents from his home. I'm entitled to ask what other documents she took and what other documents he elicited testimony about.
The court said, are there documents that relate to his immigration status?
Mr. Finkel said, I don't know. But I understood from their response to our letter the other night that his immigration status is not an issue, and it isn't. It's irrelevant. And I also understood from Your Honor's ruling the presence of lawyers is not something that the defense was going to dwell on. Nor should they suggest, by implying to the jury that Mr. Guo had a lawyer, somehow the search was improper. The search was proper. It was judicially authorized.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, asking if somebody has a lawyer does not imply that a search is improper, number 1. Number 2, she recovered documents. If they want to cherry pick as to what they put in, I'm allowed to explore what else was out there. We have no interest and, the immigration issue.
The court said, you can ask whether or not there were documents related to immigration status.
Ms. Strofa said, right. And that shows that a person lived in their home. Personal documents were in his home. The point of my cross is to show that's his residential home. I'm not seeking to present a defense that he has an immigration consequence through this conviction, which is what the brief was about, so I don't know why that's being brought up here. Totally irrelevant.
The court said, so there's no dispute as to whether or not it was used as a home, is there?
Ms. Strofa said, oh, yes. Their argument is that Mawa was also a home, and I'm trying to show this was his home alone. Nothing that is recovered here is anywhere comparable to anything recovered in Mawa. I am entitled to show that.
The court said, so you're saying this is his principal home?
Ms. Strofa said, his only residential home.
The court said, okay. Well, she can bring out some evidence on that issue.
Mr. Finkel said, certainly. It shouldn't suggest immigration status. Immigration status is not something that's relevant.
Ms. Strofa said, we're not talking about a status. I have a status, you have a status. I'm an American passport holder. That's my status. If my passport is in my home, it's more likely it's my home. It's less likely it's your home, right?
Mr. Finkel said, I completely agree the passport is.
The court said, sure. But you were asking about his immigration status.
Ms. Strofa said, I'll move from there and ask him if she found some immigration-related document or his immigration paperwork. His identity card, his wallet. I'm entitled to ask all of that.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, no objection to identity card, no objection to wallet. My objection is for 402. 403 reasons to immigration documents and immigration status. That's not appropriate. It's not relevant. I have no issue with them exploring personal effects that were there. That's fine. But
Ms. Strofa said, we're not arguing he's going to be deported or anything like that. We're just trying to show that he had immigration paperwork at his home.
The court said, but ask for a passport as opposed to, do you know what his immigration status was?
Ms. Strofa said, sure. I'd be happy to rephrase.
The court said, thank you.
In open court.
The court said, objection is overruled.
By Ms. Strofa.
Agent McNamara, how many hours did you spend searching the home?
None. I didn't search.
Okay. You simply supervised the search, correct?
Correct, him.
And you were directly supervising how many people?
Approximately 40.
40 people, correct?
Him.
And 40 people were given the task of searching different parts of the home, correct?
Yes.
Every bedroom was searched, correct?
Yes.
Every living room was searched, correct?
Yes.
Closets were searched, correct?
Yes.
Bathrooms were searched, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in the closets, and it's, if I could please have, actually, I rephrase that. You were shown pictures of the closet, correct?
Yes.
And in the closet there were white shirts hanging, correct?
Yes.
Shoes?
Yes.
Other men's clothing, correct?
Yes.
And did you know who those clothing belonged to?
No.
Did you make any effort to find out whose clothing they were?
No, that's not part of the search.
Okay. And then you searched the kitchen, correct?
Yes.
The kitchen was an average kitchen with kitchen-related things in it, correct?
It was a very nice kitchen with kitchen-related things in it, yes.
Okay, but there was food there on the counter, correct?
There was food. I don't recall specifically what the food was.
Okay, and after you searched the kitchen, you searched the other rooms, correct?
I did not search.
Well, you testified to a lot of photographs during the search, so I apologize. You supervised the search where those rooms were searched, correct?
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Okay, let's take a look at the photographs of the garage, shall we? So that we can talk about that red Lamborghini. Did you enter the garage to look for the red Lamborghini?
I entered through the garage but not to look for the Lamborghini.
And is it fair to say that you had emailed with your team about a search warrant for that particular Lamborghini, correct?
The seizure warrant for the Lamborghini was included, yes.
You emailed about the seizure warrant, correct?
I emailed the entire team, the search warrant and the seizure warrant.
Okay, and you had the seizure warrant for the car separately discussed, right? It was an important issue for you, correct?
Mr. Finkel said, objection. Vagueness.
The court said, "What is the question?"
Sure. You were specifically told to look for a red Lamborghini, correct?
No. We had a seizure warrant for the Lamborghini. But nobody said, make sure you find the Lamborghini.
Okay, so there was a specific seizure warrant for the car, the Lamborghini, right?
Yes.
You were told it was red, correct?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I know it had the VIN number on the seizure warrant. I don't recall if it had the color.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. If I could just have 95 pulled up, please. And that's the car. Did you actually view the car in this state?
I'm sorry. I don't understand. The state. In Connecticut, is it?
No. I mean covered.
Oh, no.
You didn't see it when it was covered, correct?
No, I did not. That's one of the entry photos.
Okay. And the person who took this photo, this is how they found the car, correct?
Yes.
The car was covered with this black thing on the top, correct?
Yes.
And it's plugged into, there's a wire going into the car, correct?
Yes.
And then the wire is plugged in, correct?
Yeah, it looks plugged in.
Right. I don't drive, so I don't know, but does that mean the car is charging?
I believe that's to keep the battery charged.
To keep the battery charged, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this was one of many garages that was there, correct?
There were 2 garages.
Right. And in this garage, then, there's somebody who's obviously working out, so there's some kind of workout equipment on the right. Correct?
Yes.
And then this is usual stuff you would find in somebody's home, right?
Mr. Finkel said, objection as to the form.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Yes, it's typical items from a garage.
The garage wasn't locked, correct?
I don't know that.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. And then if I could have the uncovered version of the car, please. And that's what the car looked like, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you see that little white thing on the hoodie part?
Yes.
What's that for?
I don't know.
Okay. Did you search the car at all?
I did not.
Did you talk to the person who you were supervising that was searching the car?
Yes.
Okay. And did they tell you if they found a driver's license in the car?
They did not.
Did they tell you if they found anything related to Miles Guo in the car?
No.
Did they tell you they found his clothing in the car?
No.
Did they tell you they found anything in the car?
No.
Ms. Strofa said, and let me see if I could just get those keys, please. This is Government Exhibit 36, correct? You testified about these keys?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't recover the keys, right?
I did not.
You don't know who recovered the keys, correct?
There were 2 searchers in that room. I don't recall which one recovered the keys.
Okay. So somebody gave you the keys and here they are in the courtroom, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified to these keys, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified to them because the government showed them to you when you were preparing for your testimony here today, correct?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Sure. They showed you these keys when they prepped you, right?
They showed me these keys, yes.
And they prepped you, right, for your testimony here today?
Sure, yes.
You met with them several times, right?
Yes.
You met with them this morning, correct?
Yes.
Twice this morning or once? How many times?
Once, I believe.
You believe once?
I believe once, yes.
Okay. And then they told you to come in early so that they could prep you, right?
I believe so.
They sent you a text?
Text or an email. I'm not sure.
All right. Well, here, let me help you out.
Okay.
Did you keep a note of how many times it is you met with these prosecutors to prepare for your testimony here today?
No.
Do you know if it was more than 5 times?
I don't know.
How many times in the last 2 days did you meet with them? Do you remember?
I don't know if I met with them yesterday.
Let me talk to you a little bit about these keys.
I'm
going to leave them right here. There's an evidence tag on those keys, correct?
There's a tag. I'm not sure what kind of tag this is.
Okay, but it's a tag put on by your people, right? That tag wasn't on the keys when you got the keys, right?
I have no idea who put this tag on. They were not on the keys at the time.
Okay, and the keys were just exactly like the way you see them in their envelope, right?
I don't know.
You don't know if it had a keychain on it, correct?
I don't know.
You don't know if it had a name tag on it, correct?
I don't know.
When was the first time the prosecutor showed you those keys?
Today.
This morning.
Yes.
Okay. And he showed you those keys and he told you were going to testify to them, correct?
He asked me about the keys.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. See if this refreshes your recollection.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, there's no failure of recollection. Objection.
Ms. Strofa said, I believe she couldn't remember.
The court said, no, she did not say she could not recall. Sustained.
By Ms. Schrofa.
You testified earlier that you couldn't recall, right? Whether it was by email or by text that they asked you to come in this morning.
Yes.
Okay. Does that refresh your recollection, ma'am?
Yes, it looks like a text.
Okay. And they texted you to come in early so they could prepare you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you came in early 'cause you wanted to be prepared for testimony here today, right?
That and it's 2.5 hours to get here from Connecticut. So I had to be here before the traffic.
Okay. But you met with them, right?
Yes.
Okay. And they asked you about those keys, correct?
Yes.
They asked you who recovered them and you said, I don't know, correct?
Correct.
And they asked you where they were recovered and you said, I don't know, correct?
I know which room they were in. I said it was the room it's like an office and it had display monitors for the security cameras.
And the security, that's where you were told that the keys were put, correct?
That's where the keys were found.
Okay. So the keys were not found in the garage where the car was, correct?
Correct.
They were not found inside the car where one would leave them if they used the car every day, correct?
Mr. Finkel said, Objection as to form.
The court said, sustained.
Were they found inside the car?
No.
Ms. Strofa said, if you could just show her, please, and the jury, number 95. Did somebody actually drive the car out of the garage when they seized it?
I don't know.
Ms. Strofa said, if somebody could please put up 58. You testified as to this photograph, correct?
Yes.
And could you tell me, please, on the right side you see a flag, correct?
Yes.
Did you know what that flag was for?
No. I have no idea.
Was there a name tag on the flag?
I don't know.
Was there a notation New Federal State of China anywhere telling you about that flag?
I don't know anything about this flag.
Okay. Look on the left side of that photograph, please. Do you see that big yellow, the big white round thing?
Yes.
What was that?
I don't know.
That's something that was used to broadcast with. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Ms. Strofa said, Okay. Could you zoom out, please? Did you conclude that this was an office space or a working space?
It looks to me like some type of studio-type setup.
It looked like a recording studio, correct?
Something like that, yes.
It looked like a place from where someone would broadcast, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Strofa said, May I please have number 59? Okay. This is a better picture, perhaps. So there's recording equipment right there, correct?
Yes.
There's a computer monitor, correct?
Yes.
A chair?
Yes.
And during your search, did you try to find out if these were working equipment?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Strofa said, May I have 83, please? Now you testified about certain documents that the government had you read, right?
I read them.
Right. You read them out loud. The loan agreements, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How much paperwork did your team recover from that home?
Printed paper.
Yes.
Not a lot.
Not a lot?
No.
Okay. There was a loan agreement that you read out loud for him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know what the loan agreement was about?
No.
Do you know where the loan agreement was kept?
No.
Do you know who kept the loan agreement in which room?
No.
Do you know if it was Mr. Guo's room?
No.
Do you know if it was even in the kitchen or the toilet? You have no idea where it was, right?
You could go back to the evidence log.
Do you know?
Do I know? No. I did not search.
Okay. And you testified and read documents that the government asked you to read, correct?
Yes.
You'd never read them before, correct?
Correct.
You didn't choose which documents to read to the jury, correct?
I did not.
You don't know what other documents were recovered in the home, cause you didn't do the search, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You didn't recover Mr. Guo's wallet in there, correct?
I don't recall a wallet being found.
Passport?
No.
Sitting here today, do you recall if there was even a driver's license in his name?
I don't know.
How about a learner's permit?
No, I did not see any of that.
So your memory is basically limited to what the government showed you to prepare you for the trial here today.
Mr. Finkel said, Object to form.
The court said you may answer.
No. I remember what I did when I was there.
Right. But all you did was supervise, right?
That's correct.
You're not the one who searched for anything at all, correct?
That's correct.
You recovered none of the things that you've testified to today, including the keys, correct?
That's correct.
You testified about a suit with the name Brioni on it, correct?
I think it was a piece of paper.
Do you remember testifying about a hanger with the name Brioni on it?
I saw the picture. I don't think I was asked about that.
Okay. Do you know what Brioni is?
I have no idea.
Do you know if there were suits recovered in that home, men's suits?
Suits were not on the list of items to be seized. We didn't take any clothing.
My question was okay. Did you see any of the suits?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know how old they were?
No.
Do you know if they were from 2010 versus 2020?
No.
Do you know if they were his suits or somebody else's suits?
No.
Now you remember reading a document from which they made you read names, and then you read something called Voice of Guo. Voice of Good, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what that meant?
No.
Do you know what Voice of Guo is?
No.
Do you know what Voice of Good is?
No.
Do you know what Soraka is?
No.
This is the hanger I'm talking about. You testified as to this hanger, right? This photograph?
I saw the photograph. Yes.
Right. You never saw the hanger though, right?
I did not.
Okay. So you're only testifying here about the photographs that somebody else took and gave to you. Correct?
Yes.
Ms. Strofa said, Okay. May I have, please, number 176? Okay. You testified about this document, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Finkel asked you to read it out loud, and you read it out loud to the jury, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What does it mean, designer number 1 whistle?
I have no idea.
Pants 100, do you know what it means?
I do not.
Hat 200, do you know what it means?
I do not.
Sitting here today, do you know if these pants and hats were supposed to be part of a swag bag?
No.
You don't know anything about what you read to the jury, correct?
That's correct.
All you can tell them is that there was this piece of paper found by somebody in your team and they took a photograph. And you recited that to the jury.
Mr. Finkel said, objection as to form.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
I apologize. I've already forgotten the question.
All you know is that somebody took a photograph. They took that photograph that you then looked at. The government had you read out loud to this jury and you did that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could I have 184, please? You see that yellow sticky on this exhibit that you testified about?
Yes.
For Matthew, new insurance cards for all 4 vehicles effective, or effect April 1st, 20, correct?
Yes.
Do you know who wrote that post-it?
No.
Ms. Schrofa said, and if you scroll down, please. That's the entire document, right?
I don't know.
You don't know if these documents were recovered together, correct?
I don't know.
You don't know if they were in one place together, correct?
I don't know.
You don't know who filled out the documents, correct?
Who filled out? I don't understand. Who filled out?
You don't know whose handwriting is anywhere on these documents.
Oh, no.
Somebody showed you a photograph. You're testifying about the photograph, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. You can take that down. If I could just have 393.
Mr. Finkel said, I don't believe 393 is in evidence.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. 174. You see this document? You also testified to this, correct?
Yes.
Lies told by Miles Guo. You have no idea what date they're talking about, correct?
Correct.
You don't know what questions and answers this is about, right?
Right.
You don't know who has pre-selected questions or what they are, right?
Correct.
You just got up there and read it to the jury because he told you to, right?
That's what I was asked to do, read it.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And could we scroll down? This is the full page, right? Do you know where it was recovered from?
No.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. You may take that down. If I could have 129. You testified to this document?
I don't recall.
Okay, then we can take it down. Is it fair to say, Agent McNamara, that your job was limited to receiving whatever other people in that house were looking for and giving to you?
Mr. Finkel said, object as to form.
The court said, I did not hear that.
Mr. Finkel said, objection as to form.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Nobody gave me anything. I managed the search. The searchers searched. The photographers took the photographs. They entered the items into our evidence list, so we had a list of what was taken, and they packaged it. They didn't hand them to me to do that.
Okay, fair enough. And the search you said took 4 hours, right?
Approximately 4 hours, yes.
Nobody bothered you during your search, correct?
No.
And then the search was complete, you left?
Completely.
When the search was complete, you left, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. Thank you very much.
The court said, redirect?
Mr. Finkel said, very briefly.
Redirect examination. By Mr. Finkel.
Special Agent McNamara, what was the role of you and your team on March 15, 2023?
To help execute the search warrant.
And when documents or physical items are recovered from a search, what, if anything, does the FBI do to keep track of where those materials come from?
So they're seized by the seizing agent, and then it starts a chain of custody.
And can you explain a little bit about how it's tracked where particular materials are recovered from? Like which room, for example?
Oh, sure. So when someone finds an item in a room, we send the photographer. They take a photo in place. When we do our photos, we give each room a letter, so when that item is recovered, we'll say, give a description of the item, say, cell phone serial number so and so was located in room B on desk. And then we put the two people who actually found and witnessed that item.
And was that procedure followed on March 15, 2023?
Yes.
And Special Agent McNamara, when the FBI leaves, what precautions or what's the policy and procedures right before leaving? What does the FBI do?
With the evidence?
The evidence and the photographs.
Oh. So there is a seizing agent, so there's one person that takes custody of the evidence. And they start the chain of custody, and they bring that evidence to the evidence room, where it gets logged in and put into the case file. The photographs, like I believe I said earlier. The photographer takes the SD card and burns it directly to disks, so we don't put it in a computer first. And then we make an original copy that goes into the case file, a backup of the original copy into the case file, a copy for the case agent, and then, should we need another copy for the lab or for sending stuff to forensics? For forensics, then we make a fourth copy.
Special Agent McNamara, do you know what Stats FBI, the New York FBI investigative team, took prior to the search on March 15, 2023, with respect to this case?
No.
Do you know what steps FBI, what investigative steps they took after March 15th of 2023?
No.
Do you know if the case agent, what's a case agent?
There's usually one, sometimes more, assigned as the responsible person for that case.
And do you know if the case agents, are you a case agent on this case?
No.
Do you know if the case agents know what Soraka means?
I have no idea.
Do you know if the case agents have reviewed those documents?
I don't know.
And discussed them with the U.S. Attorney's Office?
I don't know.
Whether the case agents have gotten other search warrants?
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, the case agent isn't testifying here today.
The court said, he's asked whether she knows what the case agent has done or not done. She may answer,
I do not know.
And Special Agent McNamara, aside from the search March 15, 2023, do you have any other involvement in this matter?
No.
Mr. Finkel said, Thank you, Special Agent McNamara.
The court said, recross?
Ms. Shrofa said, very briefly.
Recross-examination. By Ms. Shrofa.
You took every precaution to make sure that the evidence was properly documented, correct?
Yes.
And you made sure to take photographs of the evidence, correct?
Yes.
Or had the photographs taken, correct?
Yes.
And then you made sure those photographs were properly kept in a file, correct?
Yes.
And after taking all of those steps, when you reviewed the evidence, there was nothing with a singular name tied to that Lamborghini that involved Miles Guo, correct?
Mr. Finkel said, Objection.
The court said, if you know the answer, you may answer.
I do not know.
There was not a single title to the Lamborghini in Miles Guo's name, correct?
I don't know.
You read the title, didn't you?
I read that title. I don't know if there were other titles. I don't know.
So your knowledge for this jury is only limited to what he told you to testify about?
No.
Well, you tell me. If you know more and you took all these detailed steps, could you tell this jury if you recovered any singular document linking the Lamborghini to Miles Guo?
I do not know.
You didn't find anything linking the cars to the Lamborghini to Miles Guo?
The cars to the llama.
The keys.
Oh, the keys. I thought you said cars. No.
And nothing in the car, not a single piece of clothing, not a driver's license. Linked that car to Miles Guo, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, you can only testify to what you're aware of, ma'am.
Right.
That's a no. The answer is no? Is the answer no?
I've forgotten the question now.
There is nothing that you found linking that Lamborghini to Miles Guo, correct?
Nothing of the search of 373, correct.
That's where the car was, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Finkel said, one question.
The court said, redirect?
Redirect examination. By Mr. Finkel.
Special Agent McNamara, do you know if the FBI New York team has a video or recovered a video of Miles Guo driving the Lamborghini that was found at 373 Taconic on March 15, 2023?
I do not know.
Mr. Finkel said, nothing further.
The court said, recross?
Recross examination. By Ms. Schrofa.
Driving a car doesn't mean you own a car, correct? As a special agent, you'd be able to testify to that, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, thank you.
The court said, thank you. You may step out, and the government may call its next witness.
Witness excused.
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Your Honor. The government calls Louie Bonsukan.
The law clerk said, please raise your right hand.
Witness sworn.
The court said, please state your name and spell it.
The witness said, my name is Louie Bonsukan. It's Louie, last name, Bonsukan, Bonsukan.
The court said, you may inquire.
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Your Honor.
Louie Bonsukan, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Ms. Murray.
Good afternoon, Mr. Bonsukan.
Hello.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm the finance director for Lamborghini Dallas.
And what are your duties and responsibilities as the finance director at Lamborghini Dallas?
I help facilitate the paperwork on a sale of a vehicle.
How long have you worked at Lamborghini Dallas?
A little over 13 years.
Approximately how many Lamborghinis does Lamborghini Dallas sell in a given month, on average?
Probably an average of 35 cars a month.
I'd like to direct your attention to September of 2021. Were you involved with the sale of a Lamborghini in that month to a customer known as G Clubs?
Yes.
What was your role in that sale?
I help facilitate the paperwork on that sale with the customer.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if you could please show the witness what's been marked as Government Exhibit BR 460. And scroll through page 2 and beyond. Mr. Bonsukan, do you recognize Government Exhibit BR 460?
Yes.
Have you reviewed this exhibit before?
Yes.
Generally speaking, what is in Government Exhibit BR 460?
It's a motor vehicle buyer's order. It basically shows the sale of the vehicle and who sold it.
Ms. Murray said, and just scrolling through a couple of the other pages of this exhibit, Ms. Loftus. At a high level, Mr. Bonsukan, are these business records of Lamborghini Dallas?
Yes.
Are you familiar with these types of documents?
Yes.
Fair to say it's a regular part of your business to receive and maintain these documents?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit BR 460.
Ms. Schrofa said, we have no objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit BR 460 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, can you please publish page 2?
The court said, and Mr. Bonsukan, if you would raise your voice and speak into the microphone.
The witness said, yes, ma'am. Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Murray said, and if we could zoom in on the top portion, please, Ms. Loftus.
By Ms. Murray.
All right. Mr. Bonsukan, this is one of the business records of Lamborghini Dallas. What is this particular document?
The motor vehicle buyer's order.
And looking on the left, who was the seller for this particular car?
Lamborghini Dallas.
And the buyer?
The buyer is G Club International Ltd.
What is the date of this buyer's order?
September 13, 2021.
I want to look now on the left, the description of sale unit. Can you describe for the jury what type of Lamborghini this was?
It's a Lamborghini Aventador SVJ Roadster.
Looking to the right, what color was that Lamborghini Aventador?
It's red.
And there's a field called stock no, or stock number. What information is reflected there?
The stock number is a number that we give as a dealership to a particular vehicle that we're selling rather than using a VIN number.
So you mentioned VIN number. What's a VIN number?
The vehicle identification number, which identifies the vehicle.
Looking a bit further down on description of sale unit. Is there a VIN number listed here for this particular Lamborghini?
Yes.
And what are the last 3 digits of that VIN number?
Last 3 is 393.
What year was this Lamborghini?
2021.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could zoom out and then zoom in on the box on the right, price of unit. Down to the bottom, please. Mr. Bonsukan, at the top, what is the price of this particular Lamborghini?
$829,999.
And then looking down toward the bottom, what is the total price when you add in taxes and fees?
$832,075.
Sorry. Could you read that amount again, please, sir?
$832,000.75.
Thank you. Ms. Murray said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could go to the bottom of this page where there's a signature line, please. Mr. Bonsukan, do you recognize the seller's signature here?
Yes, that's mine.
And what was the date that you signed this particular contract of sale?
September 13, 2021.
Ms. Murray said, we can take that down, Ms. Loftus. And let's pull up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit CT 38, 37, and 40. Mr. Bonsukan, starting here on the left, top left, with Government Exhibit CT 38. Do you recognize the car depicted in this photograph?
Yes, that's a Lamborghini Aventador.
And what color is it?
It's red.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, we can take those down, and let's put up Government Exhibit CT 42 and 43, please. Which are in evidence. Starting here on the left, Mr. Bonsukan, Government Exhibit CT 42, can you describe for the jury, please, what it is we're looking at in that photograph?
This is the driver's side of the vehicle, the door, which is the scissor door, which raises up. Shows the VIN plate on the vehicle.
Can you just describe a bit more about how the scissor door operates, please?
So it hinges, as the scissor door normally hinges up and raises the door in this particular manner. Just like this one, rather than a normal door on a vehicle, which swings out. Like if you're opening and closing a door.
And the VIN plate that you mentioned, where in the photo on the left do we see that?
It's the black plate that's right on the scissor door.
Ms. Murray said, and Ms. Loftus, on the right where we have a zoomed-in portion of that black plate, that VIN plate. Can we zoom in on that even further, please, the VIN number? Mr. Bonsukan, what are the last 3 digits of the VIN number of this Lamborghini?
393.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could now, on the left side, pull up Government Exhibit BR 460 at page 2. And zoom in on the VIN field. And then on the right photo, similarly, zoom in on the VIN field. All right. Mr. Bonsukan. So on the top here is a zoomed-in version of the VIN of the car we were just looking at photographs of. Could you please read that VIN number, the vehicle identification number, into the record?
Z as in zebra, H as in Henry, W as in William, U as in umbrella, N as in Nancy, Z as in zebra. D as in David, 2, M as in Mary, L as in Lima, A as in Alpha, 10393.
And then looking at the one on the bottom here, Mr. Bonsukan. Which is from the contract of sale from Lamborghini Dallas to G Club International. Is that the same VIN number that was on the car depicted in the photograph?
Yes.
And based on your work at Lamborghini Dallas for the past 13 years or so, Do you have an understanding whether VIN numbers are unique to a particular vehicle?
They are.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, we can take those down. And let's please show the witness what's been marked as Government Exhibit GXGC 295, at page 10. Mr. Bonsukan, are you able to see what's in Government Exhibit GC 295 here, page 10?
Yes.
Do you recognize it?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
It has my name on it. It's a normal letter that I send out to a client along with the documents that we send out to them for signature.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit GC 295.
The court said, Any objection?
Ms. Shrofa said, No, Your Honor.
The court said, It is admitted.
Government's Exhibit GC 295 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, Can we please publish that?
By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Bonsukan, what is the date of this particular letter?
September 14, 2021.
And to whom is it addressed?
Mr. Horan.
Looking at the signature block here, is that your signature or your electronic signature on this letter?
Yes.
And generally speaking, what was the purpose of this letter?
It basically explains thanking the client for purchasing a vehicle and then things that's needed to be done in order to facilitate the paperwork and then to instruct them to FedEx the documents back.
And does this particular letter relate to the contract of sale dated September 13, 2021? That we just looked at for G Club International?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, let's take that down and put up Government Exhibit BR 460 again, at page 5, please. What type of document is this, Mr. Bonsukan?
This is internal record for our dealership when funds are received from a client.
And what is the date listed on the top right of this particular document?
September 14, 2021.
Looking over on the left side, it indicates cash received from, do you see that?
Yes.
Who sent the money to Lamborghini Dallas, as reflected here?
It shows G Club Hold Company 1, LLC.
Continued on next page. By Ms. Murray.
And then is that crossed out in part and there is something written over it?
Yes.
What is the corrected name listed here?
G Club International LLC.
Looking at the payment amount here just below. What is the total amount of the electronic transfer from G Club International?
$832,000.75.
And the wire detail that's in bold below, wire from, do you see that?
Yes.
Can you read what that reflects?
Wire from Mercantile Bank for G Club International Ltd.
Ms. Murray said, Let's go to the next page please, Ms. Loftus. What is this, Mr. Bonsukan?
This is a wire confirmation that's emailed to me from JP Morgan Chase Bank, which is our bank. That notifies when a wire was received.
And what is the date of this wire notification?
Monday, September 13, 2021.
Looking down at the body of this email, what bank was this wire received from?
Received from the Reserve Trust Co., Greenwood Village, Colorado.
And then a few lines down, there's a beneficiary and then a B/O customer. What does that reflect?
Mercantile Bank International, 644 Fernandez Juncos Avenue, 3rd Flow, San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, let's go to page 8, please. If we could zoom in on the text. Thank you. It's a little hard to read, Mr. Bonsukan, but what kind of information is reflected on this business record?
This looks like wire instructions.
And can you read the bank name listed at the top here?
Bank name is Reserve Trust Company.
What about the beneficiary account name?
Mercantile Bank International.
And finally, for further credit down at the bottom, what's listed under MBI client account?
G Club International Limited.
And if you could read the last 5 digits of that MBI client account number for G Club International Limited?
10,103.
Ms. Murray said, All right. Ms. Loftus, can we please go to page starting on page 19 of BR 460? Mr. Bonsukan, do you see this email that is reflected here?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, if we could scroll down, Ms. Loftus. This is part of a chain. We're going to start with some of the earlier messages in this chain. Looking here, thank you, Ms. Loftus. This is an email, September 9, 2021. Can you tell us who that's sent from?
It's sent from Max.
And to whom was it sent?
To Mike Durkee.
Who is Mike Durkee?
Previous salesperson for Lamborghini Dallas.
After the bracket external, what is the subject line of this email?
G Club Hold Company. LC 732 Lumbo SVJ Roadster.
And LC 732, what does that indicate?
That's the stock number in our inventory for this particular vehicle.
Can you please read the body of this email from Max to Mike Durkee at Dallas Lamborghini?
Hi, Mike. How much is the delivery to Connecticut?
And there's an indication of the type of email account that Max sent the email from. Can you please read that?
Sent from Proton Mail Secure Email.
Ms. Murray said, all right. Ms. Loftus, let's scroll up a bit, please, so we go later in time in this email chain. All right. Starting with the email at the top there from Max to Mike Durkee. Can you read the content of this email, please, Mr. Bonsukan?
It says, can you help arrange a delivery? Also, I should have the resolution and driver's license tomorrow. Please hold the vehicle. Thank you.
Mr. Bonsukan, do you know what the reference to resolution reflects?
Yes. The resolution is it shows who the directors or officers or members of a particular business.
And in the course of a sale to a corporate entity or a company. Is that the type of document that Lamborghini Dallas typically collects in connection with a sale?
Yes.
Why?
We want to make sure whoever is buying the vehicle is the one that's able to sign off for the vehicle.
Ms. Murray said, all right. Ms. Loftus, let's keep going in this email chain, please. So we'll focus in from exactly that through to the bottom of that email. So if you kind of start in the middle here, Mr. Bonsukan, because this is forwarded. Start with the email from Max again. This is September 10, 2021. Can you read the content of that email to Mike Durkee, please?
Hi, Mike. Attached is the passport, which I'll text you the password separately. Also, attached is the correct entity name. Please reissue the documents with the corrected name. Thank you. Kind regards. Max.
And that email is forwarded to you, which we can see at the top of this portion. Do you see that? Mike Durkee to you?
Yes.
And what does Mike Durkee write to you?
Passport secured by top secret password, 123456.
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Ms. Loftus. If we could keep going up in the chain. All right. And now I'd like to focus on this bottom half from Mr. Bonsukan to a Max Krasner account. All right. Mr. Bonsukan, this is about a month later, October 19, 2021.
Ms. Schrofa said, objection to the testifying.
The court said, you can ask him what date he sees.
Mr. Bonsukan, can you please read the date of this email?
The date is October 19, 2021.
Thank you. And who sent this email?
It was sent from me to Max Krasner.
And what is the email address to which it was sent?
Max, MAXKRASNER @protonmail.com.
Who's Max Krasner?
Probably one of the agents that helped in regards to negotiating with Mike Durkee.
And negotiating with respect to what sale, if any?
The Aventator SVJ Roadster.
And that was the sale to G Club, is that correct?
To G Club.
Did you ever speak personally with Max Krasner?
No.
Did there come a time when you communicated with Max Krasner regarding the sale?
Through email.
You could read this email that you sent to Max Krasner, please.
Hi, Max. Here are the signed copies of the buyer's order, odometer, and dealer reassignment form I have received with the Wilmington, Delaware address. This was the address Mike gave to me. Once we have title in hand, then we will send it to you at the 162 East 64th New York, New York, 10065 address with signature required on the FedEx. We will be on the lookout tomorrow for the title. If we do not receive, then we will apply for a duplicate. Best regards, and my signature.
Mr. Bonsukan, what is a title as it's indicated here?
A title is a form given for a particular vehicle. Basically, it's the ownership papers of that particular vehicle.
And what, if anything, does Lamborghini Dallas do with a title to a car when it sells a car?
We reassign the title to the new owner.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could take that down. Let's go to page 9 actually of BR 460. We can zoom in on the top half so it's a bit larger. Mr. Bonsukan, what is this document, which is part of the Lamborghini Dallas records we've been looking at?
Shows Register of Directors for G Club International Limited.
And on this document, who is listed as the named director of G Club International Limited?
It shows Howren He.
Looking to the right column, personal details, what was Howren He's place of birth?
China.
And nationality?
British.
And further right, on what date was Howren He appointed director of G Club International Limited?
October 16, 2020.
Mr. Bonsukan, have you ever spoken with Howren He?
No.
Have you ever communicated with Howren He?
No, please.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, let's now go to page 12. What is this, Mr. Bonsukan?
This looks like to be a British passport.
For what individual?
For Howren He.
Ms. Murray said, and let's go to page 18, please, Ms. Loftus. Again, part of the business records relating to this sale. What type of document is this, Mr. Bonsukan?
This is a shipment received from FedEx.
And what information or what documents would have been shipped using this shipping receipt in relation to the sale of that Lamborghini?
The title to the vehicle, the Lamborghini Aventador, as well as odometer statement. Some of the other title documents that's required to transfer.
Now, the shipping from field here indicates a certain company. Can you read what company that indicates?
Yes. Boardwalk Auto Group.
What affiliation, if any, does Boardwalk Auto Group have with Lamborghini Dallas?
Boardwalk Auto Group is our parent company. Under that group we have a number of dealerships. Lamborghini Dallas is one of them.
Looking on the left, can you please read the ship to information reflected on this FedEx receipt?
Ship to Attention Max, G Club International.
And the address?
162 East 64th, New York, New York, 10065.
Ms. Murray said, and if we could zoom out a little bit, Ms. Loftus, to see the ship date, please. Actually, the whole center portion of this. What is the ship date of this FedEx package, Mr. Bonsukan?
October 27, 2021.
And then looking at billing information here. Can you read what is reflected under Bill Transportation to on the bottom?
Bill Transportation to Lumbo 340. Your reference number, LC732.
And that reference number, have we seen that on other documents we've been looking at today?
Yes.
What information is reflected in that reference number as it's relevant to the G Club Lamborghini?
That's the stock number of the Lamborghini Aventador sold to G Club International.
Ms. Murray said, we can take that down, Ms. Loftus. Thank you. Mr. Bonsukan, in your role at Lamborghini Dallas. After you've confirmed a successful wire transfer or transfer of money and receive requested documents, what, if anything, do you do next?
I package everything up and send it to my accounting office for processing of the title.
And how, if at all, are the vehicles delivered to the customers?
Excuse me.
How, if at all, are the vehicles delivered to the customers, the vehicles?
They are normally transported via vehicle transport.
Does Lamborghini Dallas facilitate in the shipment of vehicles to customers at times?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, if we could please show the witness what's marked as Government Exhibit GC 504. Mr. Bonsukan, at a high level, what type of document is this?
This is a dispatch sheet for the carrier that transported the Aventador.
Is this the type of record that is maintained in the ordinary course of business for Lamborghini Dallas?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, the government offers Government Exhibit GC 504.
The court said, It is admitted.
Government's Exhibit GC 504 received in evidence.
Ms. Murray said, Thank you. Can we please publish, Ms. Loftus? We could zoom in on the top half. First going through order information. All right, Mr. Bonsukan. Looking on the right, what is the business name that's listed there on the right?
Boardwalk Motorsports LLC.
And again, if you could just remind the jury the affiliation between that company and your store. Lamborghini Dallas?
When they created this account for Central Dispatch, it's the parent company of Lamborghini Dallas.
And looking on the left on carrier, what role, if any, does the carrier have in the shipment of a vehicle?
That's the company that actually transported the vehicle.
Under order information here, there's a dispatch date. What is the dispatch date?
September 22, 2021.
And the pickup estimate?
Pickup estimated date is September 25, 2021.
And what was the delivery estimate for this particular shipment?
Delivery estimated, September 30, 2021.
Looking at the top there, order ID, can you read what the order ID was for this shipment?
LC 732.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus, we can zoom out and then focus on the next portion, please. Now, the vehicle information for this particular vehicle. If you could read the year and the car type and model.
2021 Lamborghini Aventador.
And then looking on the right, delivery information. What is the name for the recipient of that Lamborghini?
Max, G Club International.
And to what address was that Lamborghini for G Club International shipped?
373 Taconic Road, Greenwich, Connecticut 06831.
Ms. Murray said, May I have a minute, Your Honor, please?
The court said yes.
Counsel conferred.
Mr. Bonsukan, do you know what G Club is?
No.
Ms. Murray said, Nothing further, Your Honor.
The court said, Cross-examination. Cross-examination.
By Ms. Schrofa.
How are you doing, Mr. Bonsukan?
Good.
You work at Lamborghini Dallas, is that right?
I do.
Okay. Sorry about that. I can't see you. And you were the one in charge of this particular sale, correct?
I help facilitate the paperwork on the particular sale.
Okay. Is it fair to say that you don't remember anybody coming to view the car? Like you buy an average car, right?
Yes.
Nobody came to see it, right?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay. And you said that. Is it? Did I get it right that Dallas Lamborghini sells about 35 of these cars a month?
Yes.
Okay. And is it like an everyday car, or is it like a sporting car or a racing car?
It's, in the car world, called an exotic car. So there's not very many made. Enthusiasts that love the brand buy the car.
Okay. And people generally buy the car because it could be fun to ride in the car, is that right?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Objection.
The court said, Sustained.
It's not an everyday use car, right?
Not normally.
Not normally. Okay. And you've been doing this for 13 years, correct?
Yes.
And this was one of many sales you made during the course of your employment in Dallas, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just ask you a couple of questions about the documents that you were shown by Ms. Murray over here. Okay. Ms. Schrofa said, if I could just have first CT39, please. You recognize this car, right?
Yes, this is a Lamborghini Aventador.
What does Aventador even mean, can you tell us?
Aventador is the name of a model of a particular Lamborghini that was built. Normally they're named after a bull or a famous bull or a bullfighter.
Okay. And this is the car that you sold, right?
It appears to be, yes.
Okay. Could you tell us please what is this wire thing that comes out of the car for?
It's a battery tender. Basically, maintaining the battery as it sits in a garage. So it's fresh whenever the client wants to drive it the next time.
So do you normally do this if you're using the car every day, or do you charge up a battery when the car is not used frequently?
It varies. The car is, even when it's off, the computer systems are still working. So a lot of owners always want to keep a fresh battery, so they plug it up.
Okay. And you wouldn't. You can't tell how often the car is used, correct?
No.
Okay. Ms. Shrofa said, I could have that taken down. And if I could please have put up VR 460. And 460 is the document that you received from Ms. Murray right here who did your direct testimony, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And she asked you for documents and you sent them to her, correct?
Correct.
You've never spoken to me, right?
No.
And you've never spoken to anybody else on the defense table?
No. No, ma'am.
Okay. And I never asked you for any documents, correct?
No.
Ms. Shrofa said, okay. So let's look at the next document. Could we look at CT38? And all of the documents pertain to this car, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Murray asked you some questions about the type of door that this car has, right?
Yes.
And it's a scissor door, is that right?
Yes.
Does that mean anything? I mean, it's just a door, right? A straight door, a scissor door?
On a Lamborghini.
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
On a Lamborghini, it is a particular characteristic of the particular model. Which would be the Aventator.
It's just like a gimmick, right?
Not necessarily a gimmick. It's just a particular type of door that they have.
Okay. And on this car there is what is called a VIN number, right?
Yes.
And the VIN number is the vehicle identification number, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's fair to say, right, every car has a VIN number?
Yes.
A Subaru has a VIN number?
Yes.
And Ford has a VIN number?
Yes.
So as opposed to this fancy car, if I just went and bought myself a regular old car, it would have a VIN number, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay. So nothing special about the VIN number on this car?
No, just the identifying mark of that particular car.
Okay, great. Ms. Shrofa said, so let's look at, please, 295, GC 295. And if you could just scroll down. These are email exchanges you had about the sale of this car, correct?
Are you still scrolling? It looks like from Max to a number of people.
Right. And you've testified you never spoke to Max Krasner, right?
No, not physically it's just through email.
Okay. And you just emailed back and forth because you wanted the sale to go through, correct?
Yes.
That's part of the reason you have a dealership, right? You want to sell the car?
Yes.
And there was nothing untoward about the sale of this car, correct?
No.
You had no red flags while you were selling this car, correct?
No.
Okay. You testified on direct testimony about an email that said Proton, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You get emails from Gmail, correct?
Yes.
Yahoo, correct?
Yes.
Proton, correct?
Yes, sometimes.
Okay. So it's just like in any old email address, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you also testified, did you not, about a top secret password, correct?
Yes.
The top secret password was 123,456, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, okay. And if I could have that taken down and please show 295. Would you scroll down? I'm sorry. And these emails go back and forth all through your dealership until September, right?
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, objection. I think Ms. Schroff is asking about a different document than the one that's displayed for the jury right now.
Ms. Shrofa said, 460 is what I want, please.
The court said, is this the correct document?
Ms. Murray said, it is, Your Honor, pages 19 to 22.
By Ms. Shrofa.
So let's start with page 19. You see that email that's right there says, Hi Max, we have. Ms. Shrofa said, there you go. Thank you. We have signed copies of the buyer's order, correct?
Yes.
Odometer and dealer reassignment form, right?
Yes.
By the way, sitting here today, Do you recall if this was a used car that you were reselling?
It is a pre-owned vehicle.
Right. So it's by pre-owned. You mean it was used before, right?
Yes.
It's not a brand new Lamborghini, right?
No.
Okay. So this is a used car that is being resold to somebody, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sitting here today, do you know how old that car was?
During that time.
Yeah.
In 2021. So it was a 2021 model for Lamborghini and we sold it in 2021.
Okay. So how many owners had there been before it, do you know?
I'm not sure.
Do you know if it was more than one?
Possibly.
Okay. You don't really know, right? It could have been 1, 2, 3, you just don't know?
Correct.
Okay. And sorry about that. And at this point in this email chain, which is October 19th of 2021, right? Somebody is giving you an address of where do you read this email as telling you where to send the paperwork or where to send the car?
To send the title.
To send the title, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you send the title to that address?
I don't. My title clerk does.
Okay. And do you know what is located at 162 East 64th Street?
No.
Do you know what business is located there?
No.
Do you know who works there?
No.
Have you ever heard of a person named Miles Guo? Have you ever heard of a person named Miles Guo?
No.
Okay. Ms. Schrofa said, if we could just scroll down, please. And there is a conversation here about the passport, correct?
Yes.
And you get a copy of a passport, do you not?
Yes.
And why do you need the passport, sir?
Gives identification of who the person that would be signing off for the company when they buy a particular vehicle.
Okay. And you got a copy of the passport, correct?
Yes.
And, of course, you did whatever you needed to do to verify that that was a correct passport, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then after that, Ms. Schrofa said, if you could close that, please. You have an email that asks you if you can assist with transport. And then they said that assistance for transport can be provided, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you're transporting the car, you would only transport the car out of your dealership after the things on your checklist have been met, correct?
Yes.
You want to make sure title passes correctly, right?
Yes.
Registration, right?
Yes. We don't do the registration on a cash deal. But we make sure that the title is signed over to the correct buyer.
Okay. And you also want to make sure that the buyer has a driver's license, right?
Not necessarily a driver's license, just identification.
Okay. So you want to make sure that the person is properly identified, right?
Yes.
And you did that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And after you took all of those steps, you were going to ship the car out to whatever address they told you, right?
Yes.
Sitting here today, do you recall if the car was originally supposed to go to a different address?
No.
You don't recall?
I don't recall, no.
Okay. And is it fair to say that where a car goes also determines the cost of the insurance of a car?
Well, the shipping carrier, when we set up shipping for our client, we want to make sure that the shipping carrier, A, might be familiar with the vehicle in transporting a vehicle of this amount, and making sure that we have ample insurance to cover if something were to happen during transport for a client.
Right. But that is the insurance on the transport part of the car, right?
Correct.
Would you agree with me, as a person who's been in the car business for 13 years, that each state has a certain cost for maintaining insurance on the car?
I'm vaguely familiar.
Some states are more expensive than others, correct?
Probably, yeah.
Insurance depends on whether the car is placed in a garage or parked on the street, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained. The witness has said that he is vaguely familiar.
Ms. Schrofa said, he might know the answer, Your Honor.
The court said, with that understanding he can answer.
Do you know if insurance rates differ state to state?
No.
Do you know if insurance is higher if you park the car on a street versus if you park the car in the garage?
It depends on the insurance company.
Okay, fair enough. Ms. Schrofa said, could I have number 504, please? It's okay, actually. When you were getting ready to ship the car, you were given an address, correct?
I wasn't given the address. I have a sales assistant that actually does our transportation for us that works with the dealership.
Okay. So once you finish of the sale of the car, somebody else takes over to make sure the car gets to where it's supposed to get, right?
Yes. Normally, the salesperson and our sales assistant.
And would you know what is the markup on a used car?
The markup on a used car.
Yes, sir.
It could vary.
Do you know how much the markup on this car was?
In that particular instance, a Lamborghini Aventador, brand new 2021 model would be MSRP, manufacturer's suggested retail price, at $650,000.
Okay. And you don't know how long this car was sitting on the parking lot before it was brought out, right?
Not in particular. I could find out, but no. Not long.
When you were interacting with this person named Max, correct? He was telling you, or at least somebody in your office, where the car was going to go, correct?
Yes.
And Max, you understood, was part of G Club's, correct?
Yes.
And he represented G Club's interest to you when he was emailing with you, correct?
Yes.
And Max Krasner, from the emails, you can conclude, knew that the car was going to go to Connecticut, correct?
Yes. Honor.
Ms. Strofa said, okay. Could I have one moment,
The court said yes.
Counsel conferred.
Who did you talk to when trying to figure out the final price sale of the car?
I didn't speak with anyone.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Normally, the salesperson negotiates the price with the particular client.
So you have no idea how many times Max Krasner talked to the salesperson and went back and forth before arriving at the final purchase price?
No.
You do not know how long those negotiations lasted, correct?
No.
And do you know if Mr. Krasner or anyone else from G Clubs did an inspection of the car before it was shipped?
I don't recall. It could be possible.
Ms. Strofa said, I have nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
The court said redirect.
Ms. Murray said, yes, Your Honor. Briefly.
Redirect examination. By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Bonsukan. You were just asked some questions about how long that Lamborghini that we've been talking about was on the lot. Do you recall those?
Yes.
And you indicated it was not long, is that correct?
Yes.
What do you recall about the volume of sales that Lamborghini Dallas was doing during this time period? Fall of 2021?
Fall of 2021, obviously in the COVID times, vehicle sales were on a naturally aspirated engine. Which would be this Aventador. We're going like crazy because Lamborghini announced that they were going to start doing hybrid engines on their vehicles. So collectors and people that love this car would try buying it. Even if they're buying it for more than what the original MSRP is.
And you mentioned that the MSRP on this car was approximately what?
Approximately $650,000.
Ms. Murray said, and Ms. Loftus, if we could pull up, please, Government Exhibit BR 460 at page 2. And focusing on the final sale price of this car here. What was the final sale price of this particular car, this used car?
The unpaid balance is $832,000.75.
That's nearly $200,000 more than the manufacturer's suggested retail price, is that correct?
Yes.
And this was a used car, but it was the same year as it was ultimately sold to G Clubs, right?
Yes.
Ms. Murray said, Ms. Loftus. If we could zoom out on this and go to the left and look at the mileage listed for this particular car. It's on the top left description of sale unit. Mr. Bonsukan, how many miles were on this car when it was sold to G Club International?
317 miles.
Ms. Murray said, all right, Ms. Loftus. We can zoom out of that and go to the top again to the seller and the buyer names listed. Now, Mr. Bonsukan, you testified on cross-examination that you didn't know a person named Miles Guo. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you know what the G in G Club International Limited stands for?
No.
Ms. Murray said, just a moment please, Your Honor.
Counsel conferred.
Ms. Murray said, nothing further.
The court said recross.
Ms. Schrofa said, yes, Your Honor. Could you just leave that exhibit? Thank you.
Recross examination. By Ms. Schrofa.
The Lamborghini that was sold, the red Lamborghini, right?
Yes.
That was almost a collector's car, correct?
Yes, could be.
It was actually an investment, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
Ms. Schrofa said, she brought it out.
The court said, sustained.
The price was higher than a brand new car, right? You testified for Ms. Murray about that, right?
Yes.
And why was that?
Why is the price higher? Because it's a popular vehicle in terms of the Lamborghini world. When a lot of people were trying to buy these cars.
And they were going to change the model, correct? You testified to it on direct. Something about it going hybrid, correct?
Yes, eventually.
Right. And the Model G clubs bought would only go up in value because they were going to stop making those Lamborghinis that way, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said you may answer.
Possibly.
Well, you testified on direct that if the price was going to go up, people were going crazy. They wanted to keep that model, right?
It would be a risk, yeah, possibility where it could go up. But it also could go down.
Right. But that is why people were buying it, right?
Yes.
You testified that they were literally hot off the parking lot because everybody thought this would be a collector's model, right?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, that's a mischaracterization of his testimony. Sustained.
People were buying it during the pandemic nonstop, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained.
Did the sales go up during the pandemic?
Sales did go up, yes.
Of that red model, right?
Amongst a lot of other models as well.
Right. But the red model was included in the one where the sales are going up, right?
That's correct. It's a rare car of Lamborghini.
Exactly. Thank you. Ms. Schrofa said, could I just have this exhibit made bigger? And you see on the left-hand side where the description of the sale unit is listed?
Yes.
And it says used, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when you go down, if you read further down on this document, right?
Yes.
Okay. The salesperson's name is Mr. Durkee. And that's the person on the email chain that Ms. Murray had you read about, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And he's the person who finalized the sale, right?
He would be the one point of contact of negotiating with the customer.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay. And if I could just have that shrunk and the next page of the document shown, please. And this page shows you just an average sale of a car no different.
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor. Scope.
The court said, sustained.
The car that was driven off the lot was insured, right?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. And it was dropped off in Connecticut, correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Ms. Schrofa said, I'm done, Your Honor. Thank you.
The court said, thank you, sir. You may step out.
The witness said, thank you, Your Honor. Witness excused.
The court said, is that the last witness for today?
Ms. Murray said, we have another witness ready, Your Honor. But given the time, we defer to the court whether you'd like us to start a few minutes or whether we should stop for today.
The court said, all right. I think we should stop for today. You may step out. One moment. Members of the jury, we have finished our work for today. Monday is Memorial Day. And so you're going to be returning to court according to the instructions that have been given to you, so that you'll be able to walk into the courtroom at 9:30 sharp. It's very, very important that you follow those instructions closely, and that you get here on time. Remember that you're not allowed to discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't permit anyone to discuss the case in your presence. It's always tempting, once you start to hear witness testimony, to want to discuss the case, but that is absolutely prohibited. I wish you a wonderful long weekend, and I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday.
Jury not present.
The court said, please be seated. I'm going to ask that alternate number 5 be brought in. Is there anything that the parties wanted to raise?
Ms. Schrofa said, "No, Your Honor."
Ms. Murray said, "No, Your Honor."
Juror present.
The court said, "Hi. You're alternate number 5, right?"
Juror said, "I am." Yes.
The court said, "I received a note from you and you raised certain concerns. But now with the understanding of the transportation arrangements, my sense is that your schedule can work with the second option that was discussed. Is that correct?"
Juror said, "Correct. Up until the point of where my child is finished school June 18th.
The court said, "And then?"
Juror said, "The summer plans will now have to be changed in order for me to continue to be a juror."
The court said, "And so that you can do that, you can make those changes?"
Juror said, "I haven't even begun to figure out what that would entail."
The court said, "Well, I ask that you work on that and that you return on Tuesday. Thank you."
Juror said, "Thank you."
Juror not present.
The court said, "All right. If there's nothing further, then I wish everyone a good holiday weekend."
Ms. Murray said, "Thank you, Your Honor." You as well.
Adjourned to May 28, 2024 at 9:30 a.m.